Before we go through the actual steps to perform the bench press on the Revolution, it's very important that you take a look at how to grab the handle safely, because it can be dangerous for the front of your shoulder if you do it incorrectly. Now watch. Josh is going to reach back and grab that handle. I will hand him this one to save some time. But here's what you don't want to do, is just grab around like that. Now Josh is strong, and we got this on a really light weight so he can show you those things. But the ideal thing to do is to bend your elbow like a curl. Get this handle as close to your elbow as possible, and then rotate your elbows out to the side so that there's about a 90, an 80 or 90 degree angle between your torso and your upper arm. Notice there's about a 90-degree bend in the arm itself. Now, the direction you push is going to be critical in creating the proper path of motion. So as you push away from your chest, push forward, you'll notice that the cable is in line with the arm, maybe just slightly touching the top of Josh's arm. We don't want this. We don't want a huge gap like that where there's a huge distance, and we don't want it really uncomfortable dragging on his arm. That means you're too low. Now, I have recommended for most bench presses to use the setting number 8 on the adjustable arms. This creates a width that's just about right for a standard bench press. A couple things to take note of. Number one, notice how Josh keeps his rib cage up. He's kind of drawing his shoulders together behind him and his rib cage up and keeps it that way. Now I want you to watch what happens as he goes through the motion and how his pecs are working real hard here. And if he lets his rib cage drop, he kind of starts to lose a little bit of the tension that he was generating in there before. So for effectiveness, you'll notice this if you work hard. Now if you got too much weight, you won't be able to do this. You got to back off, learn the movements like we talked about before. The other thing I'd like for you to look at is how he bends his elbows on the way down and straightens them as he comes up. So he's not doing like a fly, and he's not keeping his elbows real close in here. It's almost as if his forearms are staying parallel to each other as they go wide and parallel to each other as they come forward. And the final thing, take a look at his range of motion. When he goes down to the bottom, he's stopping when his upper arm is at about bench level. He's not excessively low below the bench. That makes it a lot safer for the front of his shoulder and for his shoulder joint. For the chest fly, take a look at not only how to do the exercise, but how to get in position. Josh is going to reach back, carefully grab the handles. Notice we've got the handles adjusted to the longest ring so he doesn't have to reach back quite as far. We've got the adjustable arms in position number 8. Here's the other handle for you, Josh. Now, go ahead from there, curl it into your shoulders, take your arms out to the side to kind of like a press position, and from there you can control the fly position, which is kind of reaching out. Using those steps will keep it a safe achievement of the position, and then the path of motion is the next critical thing. Notice that Josh's arms are about 90 degrees from his side, and when he gets to the front, they're about 90 degrees from his torso there. And the cable, when he comes towards the top, is right against the top part of his arm. Not too far. Let's take it. Yeah, if you're too high like an incline, we'll look at that later. It'll be too much separation, and we don't want it rubbing against his arm to where it's irritating. Just very slightly touching it. Now here's the key to the fly. This is the key. Keeping a very slight bend in the arm. The elbow should not bend as you're performing the movement, but it should stay in one slightly bent position. Number 2, he's going to work real hard to keep his rib cage up. And that keeps the pecs involved. It creates a mechanical advantage in this muscle group. There's a lot of other muscles involved as well in the shoulder, but this seems to be the main reason people are doing this exercise. Watch what happens if he lets his chest drop. If he does that, there's still going to be some work going on there. I'm not saying there's nothing happening, but Josh, can you feel that? He dramatically improve or enhance the effectiveness by keeping the chest up?
Yeah, it works a lot more chest instead of the shoulder.
There you go. So he's going to keep his shoulders back, chest up, and don't use that cue. You know, a long time ago they told us, act like you're reaching around a tree, if you've ever heard that. But usually reaching around a tree is going to require you to cave in the chest. So what we're going to do is try to keep that chest up and just think about bringing the arms towards the center. As far as how far he's going to go down, he's reaching back to where his arms are just about even with the bench. That's as far as he needs to go. That's plenty of stretch. It's the safe way to do this chest fly. We're going to take a look at 2 different incline press angles, both from this same bench. Now, an incline press is nothing more than taking your flat bench and working at an angle that's up a little bit more what would normally be over your head. So So it won't quite be over your head because of the angle of the cables here. It's a little bit different on the Revolution. But watch what we do. Josh is going to reach back and grab the handle very carefully. He's going to take great care and watch how he brings it up here in 1 minute. The key, bend the elbows, arms out to the side. Now, what I'm going to have him do is slowly slide himself up on the bench. He's got his feet down on the leg of the machine. Now, how far you go up on the bench, you need to take a look at that, play with that, but that allows you to have a very different angle relative to the bottom pulley here. We've got the adjustable arms in position number 2. This allows him to come at just about 10 degrees above what would be a regular flat bench press. So this is an incline press. He's going to keep his chest up, be straightening his arms as he goes out. Notice as he comes down, he doesn't take his arms below the angle of the bench there very much. Nice and controlled. If he lets his chest drop, we see a reduction in the work that's done here in these muscles. So he's working real hard to keep that up. You need to practice that. Now there is another angle change we can make. So stop for 1 second, Josh. Now I would normally have you guys, of course, get off the machine to make your adjustment. I'm going to do this while he's on it. I'm going to move the adjustable arm down to number 9. See if I can reach over here and do this. And hear it lock into place. Now he's going to be able to go up a little bit higher incline, almost 30 degrees from the flat bench. So there's a little bit different variation for you. Try them both, and depending upon your size, that may affect which one works better for you. If you're a taller person or shorter person and that kind of thing, see how it works. But again, the same things. Watch how low you go. Press all the way up, keeping your chest up. Control your arms out to the side. Notice his arms when he's out here are about 90 degrees from the side. But when he's up at an incline, they're greater than 90 degrees, closer to maybe 120 degrees from his torso when he's at the top position. Amy is going to help us demonstrate an incline fly. Now, a couple things. Because of her height, length of her legs, it works out probably better for her to go ahead and have these in position number 9, which is all the way down. This is going to allow her to get the pulleys as low as possible so she can have some degree of incline. You're going to find that based on your height, you may be able to scoot up on the bench comfortably and that kind of thing. You may be able to go up to a position number 8. But like I said, she's going to do it number 9. Now watch how she gets the handle over there. Very important. She reaches back and grabs it and then just leaves her arms straight in the beginning. We've got the furthest D-ring set up here on these Revolution handles. And then she curls into her shoulder. That is the easiest way to reach out and get your arms into position. So from there, she takes her arm out about 90 degrees from her side, 80 or 90 degrees. And then from there, she can, with greater control, determine how far she wants to go in straightening her elbow. She's about 45 degrees from being all the way straight, and she's going to maintain it there. You could choose a little straighter, you could choose a little more bent, but the whole point of a fly is to keep your elbow in the position you start in, okay? Now, she's going to lift that rib cage nice and high. There she goes. And slowly bring the arms towards the center, keeping that rib cage up and shoulders back. The thing I'm going to ask her not to do is throw those shoulders forward. Do one wrong for me. Yeah, that's what we want to stay away from. So she's doing a great job of keeping that rib cage up and shoulders back. She's stopping when her arm is just about straight out to the side, or in other words, not letting it go below the bench, which for most of us is a really safe position to stay in. This is the way to maximize the effectiveness of this fly and keep it safe at the same time. Now, as far as flies versus presses, a lot of people start thinking that, well, flies are going to be more for shaping and presses are more for mass. There's all kinds of myths like that out there. All of these exercises, presses and flies, work virtually all the same muscles with very, very slight variations. Very slight variations in the pec, in the anterior delt, and what's going on in the elbow muscles. Decline presses are among the best pec exercises. A lot of people think, well, declines work your lower pec. Truth be known, the decline works your entire pec, especially when the resistance comes from the side, like it does with the arms of the Revolution. So I've got this set right now on number 7, which is a great place to start for a low-angle decline. Watch how Amy reaches over and grabs that handle. And I'll hand her this one. But I want to show you, if she was doing a regular flat bench, go ahead and notice how she curled up to the shoulders and then went out to the side. A regular flat bench, come on up, she would be straight out here. And notice this separation between the arm and the weights from the side here. Well, That's what indicates that this is a great angle of the cable for a decline, about a 10-degree decline, just a little bit below flat right here. So now show us a press there, Amy. Notice her arms are about 80 degrees from her side and about 70, 80 degrees from her torso, even when she's in the front, that declined plane right there. And she's keeping her shoulders back and her chest up, straighten the arms as she goes out. Notice her forearms stay parallel to each other the whole time, and she's not going behind the bench trying to get some kind of excessive stretch. Now let me show you, you can do two other variations of declines here. You will want to get off your machine. You wouldn't want to have somebody do this, but I'm going to do this to save time for Amy. Just come out here to position number 6 on each side. There she is. And now we're a little bit wider. We're going to bring the plane down to about 30 degrees below what would be a flat bench. So notice she's almost pressing out over her thighs a little bit. Cable's still in line with her arm, but the new cable position, the new cable width, allows her to do this great pressing motion of a 30-degree decline. And we've got one more good option here, depending upon your size. Now, not all of these will be perfect for everybody. I'm going to go up to position number 5. She's going to tilt down a little bit more. Make sure your shoulders have this much internal rotation. But she is pushing down, almost touching her thighs down there with a really deep, almost 60-degree decline. This is a great variation. You can see even her upper pecs working here. I know that that's amazing, and all the magazines say, no, 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 this is lower pec. But because the resistance is pulling out, and when she gets to the middle there, that upper pec is pulling straight in her arm, she is working the entire pec right here. This is a great, great pressing exercise. With the declined fly, I'm going to show you 3 variations. Now, the point of a decline is that if your flat bench is at this angle, like a traditional flat bench, your declines will be at various angles below that in terms of pressing, or in this case, creating a flying rotary motion here. So, watch how Josh grabs that handle, and then to be safe, just curls it in towards the shoulder, rotates those arms out about 80 or so degrees from his side, and then slowly makes the arms a little longer out there for the fly position. He's going to keep that elbow stable. Now, I've got this, each adjustable arm on number 7 if I look through the window. So I maybe actually come up just a tad bit, Josh. See, because this is about a 10-degree or so decline. And obviously, different people's torso lengths, you know, how tall you are and that kind of stuff, it's going to affect the exact degree of decline. The key is that your arm kind of lines up with the cable. So as he comes back for a stretch, he's not going below the angle of the bench, very important for safety. He's keeping his rib cage up the whole time, maximizing the effort in the muscles that he's interested in working. Now, I wouldn't do this normally. You will need to get up to do this. Hold still there for a second, Josh. I'm going to change this angle from number 7 to number 6. It has changed the width. It has changed the height of the pulleys. That means he's going to go to a little bit lower, closer to about a 30, maybe 40 degree for him decline, 40 degrees away from his position of flat bench over his shoulders. Notice his hands are ending up just about over his thighs and over his hips. Keeping the same fly. And now I'll show you the final adjustment, because there's virtually 3 variations for the decline press or decline fly. And this raises the pulley angle, so as we raise the pulley angle, the angle of movement needs to go lower. Whoops, there you go. So now he's really down there, 60, even 70-degree fly in the decline position. This is a great exercise. You can notice it working every single part of the pec as he goes through the motion. Lower pec from the beginning, and upper pec as he gets near the end of the motion, controlling his range of motion back. That is perfect. Here are some really fun upper body exercises that also include some great challenge for your trunk. And we call them resisted punches. The thing I'm going to ask you not to do is get all fired up about the punch part and start moving fast until you learn to control it slowly. Now, there's a lot of variations, so pay close attention. We're going to start with the arm initially in position number 8, which is pretty low angle, as you can see. Now, Josh has grabbed the handle with an overhand grip. So basically, the cable is coming from under his arm. So he's going to just start with it by his side down there, and he's going to do a kind of a reach to the front, so his hands starting from his side but ending up towards the center of his body. So going up and to the center. And you can, as you come down, Josh, you can even bring it around. Yeah, so you can just, with the pulley down that low, you can move more down and then up into the center. Down and up into the center. That's a fun one. So remember his hand position there, position number 8. That's the first variation. This next variation, just moving out to number 7, he can still have the same overhand grip, But this time, you notice when I moved to number 7, the pulley got wider. So he can start to allow for that by going more across. Now notice every time he does this, he's turning his whole torso and everything. So there's a little bit of up and a little bit of across as dictated by the line of the cable. It's a great exercise. I'm going to recommend that you do these exercises one side at a time. So he could be just finishing all on this side and then moving to the next side, or have both in his hands, but don't do them at the same time. You could alternate them like this. This allows you to get the rotation, because if you move both at the same time, you're not going to get the trunk rotation that's such a great part of this exercise. Let me show you what it looks like from the next position, number 6 here. All you can see as the pulley gets a little higher, there will be less up to the motion, but it gets wider, so there's going to be more across to the motion. He's also changed his hand position here, so he's going out, and you can go across a bunch. There you go. Look at that great trunk rotation associated with that. And he's not moving exceptionally fast. Nice and controlled is the key. One more for these across type motions, and I'll show you. This is almost purely straight across, almost all the trunk rotation. He's reaching clear past the level of his other shoulder over here in terms of how far he's twisting. Does that feel good?
Oh, yeah.
Notice he's sitting straight up the whole time. He's not slouching on any of these, and that is so important when you're doing rotations with the trunk, is keeping that posture, just like your mom told you a long time ago. So look, now we've gone up one, and as soon as this starts getting above the height of the shoulder, for Josh, position number, I think it's number 4, starts getting above his shoulder, he starts pressing downward. So as the pulley goes above you, the angle of motion starts to go down, so it's down and across, and the final one we're going to do, position number 3, is a lot of down to it along with his crossing motion. So review those carefully before you start to address these exercises, because the angle of the adjustable arm totally affects the angle of the cable, which will totally dictate how you should move in terms of up versus down versus across. Wait until Amy shows you all of the versions of cable crossovers that you can do on the Revolution. It's really, really amazing. So I'm going to have her start with this arm position. The adjustable arms are in number 5, because that is roughly, you take a look at this, roughly the height of her shoulders. Now, if I was sitting here, it might be a little taller. I might adjust them up. Well, I just have to check and see. But I'm going to say the number 5 is a good place to start for your standard forward cable crossover motion. And really, a cable crossover motion has traditionally just been a fly that was performed with a cable instead of a dumbbell. So it's kind of a straight arm thing, or a static arm thing, meaning even if you have a little bend, it stays that way the whole time. She's going to kind of keep her shoulder blades from moving too much. She's not throwing them real far forward and slouching when she goes forward. So she's keeping that rib cage up nice and controlling everything, controlling how far back they go to where they're just about even with her sides. That's perfect. But that's the forward fly. Now watch what we can do here. If I bring this arm up to, let's see, what is that, number 4, and bring this one up to number 4 now, because the pulleys went up high, we're going to move the motion ever so slightly down below that forward position. So there's a decline, maybe a 10-degree decline on the cable crossover. We can adjust that again. Position number 3 gives us a little deeper decline. That almost looks like the traditional cable crossover and the old machines we had in gyms where the pulleys were always much higher than our heads. That's a lot like this. So there's 3 variations so far. Let me show you some more. I'm going to come down this time below the position number 5 where we started. Position number 6, because the pulleys are low, the motion will be high. So she's doing about a 10-degree incline cable crossover. Pretty cool. There you go. Everything else has stayed the same, just the plane of motion has changed. One more change there relative to the incline or decline thing. So this is going to be a higher, closer to about a 30-degree or so incline. Getting worn out there, Amy? Those are all great exercises. Now let me show you something else you can do. I really love this. I'm going to bring this one up to number 6. I'm going to bring this one back up to about a number, I don't know, about a number 3. Notice how they're opposite each other at opposing angles here. And she's going to move downward like a decline on one, upward like an incline on the other. That is a great diagonal crossover. Now listen, here's some other things that we could talk about. Watch this. We'll take this handle. One of the great things about these webbing handles is I can have her move to a grip that was more of what we called a vertical grip or a hammer grip. Now, as she grabs a hold of that with a palm up, as she brings it across, she can turn, so reach on out there like this and rotate. Yep, there you go. So as she comes across, she's rotating also. If you did that on every one of those, you're adding even more variations. She could do it on both sides. Now look, right now she's doing one at a time. So she could do both arms together, bilateral, one at a time, unilateral. She could, get this, this is weird. Got it? That'll work. She could simultaneously alternate, so this one's forward while this one's back, and then as this one goes back, she brings this one forward. Just a little fun little coordination thing there. And you could also, instead of holding yourself upright, which she's working so hard right here because she's not leaning against anything, we could use the leg press seat, which would be short but would help stabilize her low pack, put it on the seat, slide it back down here, then she would be totally supported down here in the lumbar spine. There's even another way to do this. Bottom line is, if you're creative and you understand everything we just showed you, there are at least 72 different variations of cable crossovers right here because of the amazing engineering of the revolution. Let's do some standing chest presses. Now the first thing to decide is which setting of the adjustable arm is just about your shoulder height, because that's going to be your forward press. For Josh, that's hole number 3. If you look through the window right here, you'll see it's hole number 3. He's able to push straight forward and towards the center. Now, he's controlling it all the way back. He's keeping his trunk very stable, tightening his abs, controlling everything. Now, something else you can do, if you feel like you're wobbling back and forth, Josh, you can even try it and tell him how it feels. You can put one foot a little bit more forward, so it's kind of staggered a little bit like that. So that to help you does it help you stabilize a little more this way?
Yeah.
Front to back. So you can play with that. Some of you might actually want your feet side by side for that extra stability effort right there. But anyway, hole number 3 is a straightforward press. Now we're going to make some variations here. I'm going to move this up to number 2, and by going up to number 2, pulley's high, he's going to push low. You can see how he made that decision really quickly. He's bringing his arms kind of out to the side still, but then pushing slightly down. And you can see we're on about a 10-degree standing decline chest press. And if we went up one more, it's going to require him to create an even greater angle of decline. Now, not everybody's shoulder is going to feel comfortable with every one of these variations. So please start with very lightweight, see how it feels. That whole idea of no pain, no gain, you can forget that. If it bothers your joints, you shouldn't be doing it. There's plenty of variations on this machine without doing anything that bothers you, okay? Now, what if we go back down on the other side of the third hole? Here's number 4. Let's see if I got those about right. Now, because they're below his shoulder, he's going to be doing an incline press. A little bit of an incline, maybe 10 degrees or 20 degrees above what would be a flat press for him, keeping everything super stable, keeping his chest up, and probably the most dramatic, we go below that. Sorry, Josh, right mid-set there, mid-rep. There's position number 5, and it's a pretty high incline, kind of a nice 45, 50-degree angle, pressing up. Notice it's even above his forehead, but he's keeping everything stable, really controlling everything. Little shoulder blade movement because he's really trying to reach up now, letting those shoulder blades pull out, but he's still working that chest, anterior delts, everything on the front, even some tricep. So there's even more variations. Plus, if he was to throw in alternating, simultaneously alternating, doing one side so he was working his trunk rotators, all those great things you can do, he would have so many variations right here. Amy is going to show us endless variations on standing cable crossovers, okay? Now, the first thing in the standing exercises, just like any of the others, when you're trying to get a forward movement, you want to figure out where your shoulder height just about meets, the setting of the adjustable arm so that the pulley is, well, just about that same height, because as you press straight forward, you want that cable to be right in line with your arm. Now, she's going to figure out a stance for her that helps her stabilize. She chose a front to back kind of foot position. So you can try to play with that and see what helps you keep from moving around much. She's stabilizing the trunk big time. And there's that crossover, which is really just kind of a cable version of a fly, right? So she's stabilizing at the elbow, controlling everything that's going on here. So we're position number 3, I think, for her, for a shoulder height, for a forward one. Now hold still for a second there, Amy. Now I'm going to come up to number 2 on each side, which, as you'll recall, If you go higher with the pulley, you're going to go down with the motion. So it's going to be a very slight decline type thing for her. If she stays upright, now she's going to show you something here. By staying upright, it's a decline. If she leans her whole body forward, lean forward just a little bit into it. Now she's back to that forward cable crossover again because she moved her body forward as we moved the arm up. So watch those things and make sure you're getting out of it what you really want. There's nothing wrong with bending forward like that at the hips, you know, not slouching in the spine. But just make sure you're getting the exercise you want. We could go a notch higher. I'll show you. That's position number 1. There's still one of higher than that. But she's going to do a little bit lower decline. So she's coming down almost even with her waist by the time she finishes in terms of height. You can see that right there. It's a great, great decline crossover. Now, hold still for a second there, Amy, while I do this thing. Again, this is not ideal to make the adjustments on the fly here while we're moving, but for the sake of showing you guys everything we want you to see, this is position number 4. And she's going to, because it's lower than her shoulder, she's going to be moving up at an angle. Very slightly up. See that little reach she's creating right there? And then hold still for 1 second. This is position number 5, the last one I'm going to show you. But it's going to be a more dramatic incline, really reaching up there. You're going to feel a little weaker because that pec's not doing quite as much, just a little bit of upper pec and a whole bunch of anterior delt. Can you feel that you got weaker on that one? Of course, she's done 85 reps, so she's going to get tired also. But when you're down doing the declines with more of that pec involved, you're going to feel a little stronger, so you might need to adjust your resistance accordingly. You got all the variations from doing the internal rotations by adjusting your grip to doing alternating, simultaneously alternating, bilateral, unilateral, all these wonderful things you can do to create just dozens and dozens of variations on standing cable crossovers. This is a resisted punch, but it's in the standing position, which is an option because of the adjustable arms on the Revolution. Now remember, where you put this is not just arbitrary. This totally dictates the path that you're going to travel through. And I highly recommend that you do this one arm at a time, meaning either just with one side, finish this one, do the other one, or if you go ahead and hold the other side, only alternate because that's what gives you the ability to move the trunk, and that's what separates a resisted punch from just a pressing movement, okay, is the trunk part, right? So this is about shoulder height, so Josh is just going to press forward and across, kind of. There's not any up and down to it because this is already at shoulder height. And you can really get some trunk into this. Yeah, and go ahead and turn at the hips and everything because we're in the standing position. You see when we're seated doing this, it's all trunk. But in the standing position, you could go ahead and turn with your legs a little bit, adds to the exercise. Now we're going to make a minor adjustment. I'm going to go up with the arm. That's position number 2 now. So he's going to go down ever so slightly. So he's down and across. Get some trunk, get some hips and everything into that just a little bit. There you go. Come on. It's like you're dancing there, buddy. You can do it. All right. We got one more position I think that might be viable for this. It's more of a downward punch. It's position number 1 on the arms. Now the thing is, with your height differences, some of you are shorter than Josh, some of you are taller than Josh, but that's going to change how much of an incline or decline you can do with these things based on the different settings. Okay, hold still for a second. I'm going to go down below your shoulder about position number 4, which is going to require him to move up and across. And he has lots of variations on this incline version. So we're down to position number 5. And I think number 6 is about as low as we're going to go for him because it's going to be really an upward motion at this point, which is fine. It's kind of like an upward press. But we don't need to go much lower. So there are just countless variations for this thing. Make sure in your punches that you make it a punch and not a press, distinguished by the amount of rotation and trunk movement you put into it. This is the more traditional seated shoulder press, performed in kind of the wide planes or the wide position. And the first thing to do is look at the flat bench and the adjustment of the arms right here. I'm going to suggest either a position number 7 or a position number 8. And those will not do exactly the same thing. So take a look. We're going to start number 7 here, which is a little bit wider position. The key is that the pulleys are low, almost as low as they can get, almost. Now watch how Amy gets the handles into position. She kind of does the curl. She doesn't just throw it out here like this to try to get it out there, but she does the curl and then rotates her arms into position. Now watch the plane of motion. This is really critical. It's an overhead press, but because of the angle of the cable, the pulley is behind her just a little bit, she has to go slightly in front of her forehead. So she's ending up about right here, and this keeps the ideal alignment of her path of motion with the plane of the rope. You see that? Now look what happens to the rope if she pushes straight up overhead. You see we have a separation between where her shoulder is and where the rope is, and that's kind of pulling back on her also. You want to avoid that by aligning your path of motion with the rope / pulley. There you go. Now this wider setting pulls outward some on her and makes it a little bit harder. You cannot just assume that 10 pounds on this is the same as 10 pounds on a traditional dumbbell, or even this next version I'm going to show you. This would feel a little tiny bit easier as I go narrower to position number 8. So now the pulleys are down a little bit closer. She still has this angle of the rope, so she's pushing up and away, and a slightly forward angle to the overhead press. There you go. Now look, on all of these seated shoulder presses, she's working real hard. Maybe the most important part of this is keeping everything stable in the trunk and in the spine. So she's got her abs tight, she's got her entire trunk muscles tight, she's got her chest raised, her rib cage up. She's letting her shoulders move up like she's reaching forward and letting her shoulder blades move down. Those shoulders have got to move, shoulder blades have got to move in order to get that full motion. Let me show you what you probably won't want to do. There is another setting downward, and it's number 9. But if I do that, it gets the cables, or the rope so narrow that they're really going to just be scraping against her so much, the width of her body really won't even fit between the width of the ropes in this setting. So that's why I'm going to go back and recommend position 7 or position 8 for the seated overhead press. Now here's a great variation on an overhead press or a seated shoulder press, but because of the adjustable arms and having so many angles available to us by which we can move the pulleys and the ropes, this is a little bit different than the regular seated overhead press because we brought the adjustable arms out to position number 6. So it's a little bit wider and the pulleys are a little bit higher. Because of this position, we're not going to be able to go so much overhead, and it's really going to qualify more as a really high version of an incline. Now, you know, traditionally for incline presses, we think chest exercises, that kind of thing. Well, they always involve the anterior deltoids and the shoulder muscles as well. This is an incline that's so high, it probably doesn't even hit most people's range for what they consider to be a chest exercise. So that's why we put it under these shoulder exercises, because it's a really high incline that still works so much shoulder, very, very, very tiny bit of upper pecs. So we're going to put this as a shoulder exercise. Notice we're still got the major trunk stabilization. In fact, that even becomes harder as we start to push more forward. So the trunk stabilization may even be tougher than in your traditional overhead press. Look from the side and you can see how Josh is moving at that really high angle based upon the relationship between the pulley and the rope and his arm. So you can tell if it's too high. Stop for 1 second, Josh. It's too high if you see the separation between his arm and the rope, and it's too low if it's really dragging against him and bothering him. So right there is the key, keeping his chest up, keeping that posture. And again, that is always going to be the most important part to take care of and learn first, is how to control all of this right here, the spine and the trunk, and then work on your path of motion and control. And then, and only then, do you need to worry about the weight. So that's position number 6 and about a 60-degree incline press. I always wondered why we always had shoulder presses and chest presses, but we only had chest flies and no shoulder flies, because that's really just a variation on the press with a straighter arm, maintaining a slight bend in it, instead of allowing the elbow to move the whole time. So with the pulley options and the options from which the ropes can come from a real wide position on this revolution, this is a great exercise to explore. So really, Josh is performing the same path of motion that you find in a seated press or an overhead press for shoulders, only is maintaining the elbow position. Now the weight's going to be a little bit lighter, need to be a lot lighter actually than what a press would be because of the leverage here with the almost straight arm. But see how he keeps this bend, keeps his trunk stable? We've got the adjustable arms on position number 7. You could also try position number 8. Those are going to be just about the only 2 settings I'm going to recommend in order to maintain this plane of motion And there he goes. And notice he's letting his shoulder blades move as he's reaching for the top. Shoulder blades come down as he lets his arms come down. And he's controlling them to about shoulder level or a little bit below. So go slow on all these movements and get a feel for the path of motion, get a lot of control over them. Then you can worry about the load later. How's that feel, Josh?
It's good.
All right. This is a great option for a shoulder press. It's the front shoulder press. So we're changing the plane of motion from what would be considered maybe a wide version more to this plane in here. But look at the considerations. We've got the adjustable arms on position number 8 right now. Position number 9 would bring them all the way to the center, and that's not going to be wide enough to get around Josh's body. So the lowest version is number 8. He's got the traditional grip with the cables on the outside, but his arms are in closer. Now look, he's pushing up, but he's not exactly going straight overhead. He's still pushing slightly forward, so it's a very slight angle forward. But the key here is, as his whole arm and path of motion moves to the front, he's going to have to work real hard on stabilizing in here because he's going to want to fall backwards in a sense. So he's got to work real tough on the stabilization. Now, we do have another version of this. We could go slightly wider, but it's going to ever so slightly change the path of motion also. So because the ropes and the pulleys are a little bit wider here, he can move his arms out a little bit, but watch how he's moving still at an angle. So it's like a V press almost, where his arms aren't all the way out to the side like before in a traditional shoulder press. They're a little bit halfway in between, not to the front, kind of halfway in between here. But because of the angle of the rope, he's got to angle to the center in order to complete this press. So pay real close attention because those are very specific directions, and every time you change this adjustable arm and therefore change the pulley and the rope, you've got to look at the different paths of motion and how it's going to influence even the amount of resistance you use. In the seated front shoulder raise, we've got a couple arm positions that are going to work very well for us. And it's also the path of motion, but the first thing I'd like for you to look at is the handle itself. Now, we have the snap hook through the D-ring that's closer to the grip, and that's going to shorten the distance between the resistance and her hand so that she has more range of motion. If we use the full length of the strap, she'd be starting way out in front of her, and that's not going to be quite the range of motion she probably wants to perform. So notice that the arms are in position number 9, which is all the way down and narrow. And because the pulleys are right behind her, very close, she's not going to be able to move straight forward because that rope will be wrapping right around her. She's going to move up and out. So that's the key to position number 9, is the upward and outward motion, kind of a wide front raise, if you will. Now, take a look at what she's doing. She's moving both arms. Amy's got great trunk stability. She does a lot of training and everything. But look, you might start with just doing one at a time, because when she raises one, it's not as hard for her to control this trunk against the weight pulling back on her. But by the time she moves both, now resistance from both sides really trying to pull back on her, it's going to take even more effort from here, twice as much, if you will. So start with one. You might even work on alternating, but then wait until you get stronger before you go to both. What adjustments can we make? Right here. Move out to number 8. Changes the width of the pulleys, if I can reach over there. Because they're outside of her body now, she can move those ropes in, so she's going from beside her body, forward, and towards the center this time. It's a little bit different. It's a great way to create variation. And we have even one more option for us. If we go to position number 7, which is the widest that I would probably choose for a front shoulder raise, she has a lot of inward motion she can perform because of the width of the pulleys. Now, if we go any wider to position number 6, that's going to elevate the pulleys so much that it's not going to provide the same resistance that we'd really like to see for a front shoulder raise. So there's 3 different positions. First one with the narrow setting on number 9, up and out. The next 3 are versions of up and towards the center. Seated lateral raises are performed with the bench flat, so you can sit right down on it and scoot up close to, but not leaning against, the machine up here. We've got the adjustable arms set on number 9, which is as close as they go and all the way down. And then we've got the handle, the grip with the adjustable D-rings on, the snap hook is through the D-ring that's closer to the grip itself to allow us a little more range of motion. Now, Facing forward like this like Josh is doing right here is one great version. And notice Josh is moving slightly forward from straight out because of his relationship to the pulleys right here. So his upper arm is coming almost straight out because he has a slight bend in his arm. His hand is very slightly in front of that. So you can see that real well, just like this. Not back here. Upper arm straight out, hand slightly in front, more near where the plane of his chest would be. So there's a great variation. This is a tough, tough exercise. So you're going to need to go really light on this. And if you find yourself swinging it and that kind of thing, back off on the weight, okay? Now, let's show them another version, Josh. I'll take this from you. You can spin around. And it's not that one of these versions is better than the other. They're just great variations that you can perform on the Revolution. The first one has got a slight backwards angle to it, but you can still see that, like most lateral raises, it's primarily this middle deltoid with a bunch of help from the anterior and the posterior and some other deep guys like the supraspinatus. But he's got a slight backwards angle to his motion. Now, another variation we can perform by facing forward like this is if he moves almost at a 45-degree angle. So it's not like a front raise. It's not like a true lateral raise. It's a hybrid that's kind of halfway in between. And this is a great, great exercise. So it's like his arms are in front of him, and he's leaving them in the front as he lifts out to the side. And if you're good at controlling your core, your trunk, let's show him a version, Josh, where you lean forward at the hips, so you're kind of angled your whole torso. And then you can do another version of that 45-degree, where he slightly changed his body position. But that, of course, requires tremendous control, because when he's not slouching into that position, okay, he's not just curling over and into that new position. He's keeping everything straight in his trunk and leaning from the hips. So there's some great variations, but trunk control, as usual, ends up being the determining factor in whether you're ready for some of these. This exercise is called the reverse fly because you're performing a fly motion, but because the direction of resistance is from the front, you're working the muscles more on the back side of your body rather than the chest and those things on the front side of your body like you would with a dumbbell maybe. So we've got 3 different positions we can use for the adjustable arms. There's a couple keys though. Let me show them this, Josh. I've got the strap in the furthest D-ring, the longest D-ring, so that you get full use of the cable travel and as much extension out there as you can get. Right now we're in position number 6 on the adjustable arms. And because it's a little bit lower than Josh's shoulder, he's taking advantage of that position by moving slightly upward. You can see how he's remaining in line with the ropes that way. Arms are staying near straight, maintaining that slight bend. Now, we can change this to position number 5. Because that's almost right even with his shoulders, he's going to go straight forward and straight back. One of the things you're going to have to look at, depending upon your arm length, you may have this tremendous travel requirement or range of motion requirement of the machine, and you might find that if you really want to get way back there, the machine stops moving before you finish. All you have to do is maybe slightly lean or slightly adjust yourself forward on the bench to give you that little final bit of motion. And even if you perform it and you stop 1 degree in front of what you thought you were doing, just adjust what you're asking from your exercise. Those muscles are going to be working just fine either way. Now, one of the things that you get to decide on, let me have this arm for a second here, Josh. You need to decide on what I'm going to call hand position, but it really affects your whole arm. Traditionally on a fly, we see people maintain this position where the palm is perpendicular to the floor here, so his palms are facing each other as he comes in and out. Now, one of the other options you have is not just changing your hand, but when you change your whole arm in order to create a palm down position, notice what happens back here in the shoulder. When he goes palm more upwards, he shifts his whole set of shoulder muscles. When he goes palm down, he changes that a little bit. So basically he's altering the contribution of the shoulder muscles just a tiny bit. And it's not which is better, it's more about just maybe changing them up from day to day and workout to workout so you have a little bit of variation. You're involving the posterior deltoid, portion of the middle deltoid, the back part of the rotator cuff, all the scapular muscles, as you can see very well. But this plane of motion is going to be critical. And we have one more option coming up to position number 4. Because that's a little above his shoulders, he's going to move downward very slightly. So remember, pulley position, angle of the rope is going to determine your path of motion. We looked at 3 slight variations. This one slightly down, a straight back, and one when the pulley was lower in position number 6, moving very slightly upward. This rear delt row is really working a lot more than just rear delts. You're going to see when Amy performs this exercise that her scapular muscles, between her shoulder blades, are going to be working hard, her spinal erectors and trunk muscles. You're also going to notice her posterior deltoids, middle deltoids, a lot of things in there. But let's take a look at how to perform it. Number 1, sit up your machine with your strap, snap hook in the furthest D-ring. Number 2, she's grabbing right hand, left rope. So she's crossing those ropes, okay? And then let's look at the adjustable arms. We're going to start out in position number 6. That's one of 3 possible variations in the arm or pulley heights for this exercise. Now watch, because it's a row, she's not keeping that straight arm thing, she's bending her elbow. This forearm stays in line with the cable the whole time, as if that forearm was an extension of that cable, all right? Leading with the elbow, keeping the spinal position. Notice that the pulleys are a little bit below her shoulders, so she's moving upward at a very, very slight angle, and stopping when she gets right back there, not leaning with her torso or anything else. There you go. Now we're going to look at position number 5. That was number 6. This is position number 5, where the pulleys are just about the same height as her shoulders. It may be different for you. But now she's just going to be going straight forward, straight backwards. Forearms in line with the cables. As she comes back, she's not letting those elbows drop. You've got to watch that. And if you're using too much weight, many times as you come back, people will let them drop because they're too weak to hold them up in this position with the weight they've chosen. So be careful. And the final setting with the adjustable arms is position number 4. Where now, because they're slightly above her shoulders, she's going to be moving ever so slightly downward with the plane or path of motion being in line with the ropes and the pulleys. That is perfect. Notice she's moving her shoulder blades every time, so she gets that scapular retraction as part of this rear delt row. Seated internal shoulder rotation can be performed in the revolution facing the machine. Now, the pulley needs to be set at a height. You're going to move the adjustable arm to a height that is just about level with the forearm. Notice Amy's got her arm bent to 90 degrees. You want the pulley at about that same height. So make that adjustment first, and then we're simply going to hold the upper arm still as she rotates towards her stomach. That is really important that you don't, as you rotate, let this arm move away or let it move backwards or forwards, because the whole key is this rotation as if this was a hinge, almost like a door or a gate that's opening and closing right here. Now, because of the angle of the pulley, she's really not having to go very far out. So if she wanted more range of motion on this left side, she could bring her left leg over here. Now, to show you what that looks like so that we're turning more towards the camera, we're actually going to swap over and do the right internal rotation. But she's not turning and facing totally away from me. She's just angled towards that other pulley, but allows her to have a greater starting position back here in external rotation from which she's pulling into internal rotation. So the first one she was starting about right here. Now she's starting back a little bit, but still movement towards the stomach, still with the pulley height, even just about with her forearm and elbow, and that rope's coming right across and closing in towards her belly. Seated external rotation of the shoulder can be performed in two different positions on the bench. The bench is flat and we're facing the machine to start with. We have the adjustable arm set so that the pulley is just about at Amy's elbow height, or forearm. Now, notice she's got her arm bent to 90 degrees here. She's going to reach across, so in order to perform external rotation, we'll need the pulley or the rope from the other side. Now, the key here is that she's keeping her upper arm stable. She's not letting it move across this way, being pulled inward. She's not pulling it backwards and turning her whole torso. This is not just about pulling on the handle. This is about moving the parts that need to be moved for the specific exercise. So if I were to put my finger down here, notice she's staying right on my finger as she rotates only in this upper arm and shoulder. So it's kind of like opening and closing a door with the forearm being the door and the hinge being stable right here. Now, the resistance is coming from across, and she can come all the way in towards her stomach and then pull outward. There is another slight variation you can perform on this that might allow you more range of motion with the resistance. And I'll have Amy show you that by simply putting both legs on one side of the bench, the side opposite of the pulley that you're using. But she's not pointing out, perpendicular to the bench. She's just angled very slightly, almost towards this other adjustable arm. But that allows her to reach in closer to her stomach, keeping some resistance, and then rotate outward. So everything else is the same. We've just adjusted very slightly from facing straight forward to facing at a very slight angle. So that's external shoulder rotation. Standing shoulder presses can be performed with several different adjustable arm positions, but how you perform them might have a lot to do with your height. Because if you're really, really tall, by the time you try to reach all the way up, we might run out of room for the rope to travel. So that's going to influence your adjustable arm position. And maybe even if you're really tall, whether you can even perform this exercise, you might have to go back to the seated position to perform your shoulder presses. So take a look. Josh is standing here on the foot plate, not resting his back against the machine here, so he's having to support and control everything. Now, we're in position number 7 right now. On the pulleys, I think. Is that what it says? Yep, number 7. So he's pressing upwards, and take a look at the angle. Because the pulley is slightly behind him, he's going to have to press slightly forward, keeping that rope in line with his arm. So he's a little bit of a wide shoulder press up and overhead, slightly to the front. Now we can make a change. Hang on, Josh, I'm going to make a change here to position number 6, which creates increased width. And increased width with the cables pulling out or the ropes pulling out is going to actually make it a little bit harder and also change the angle ever so slightly. So between these two positions of the arm adjustment, you'd have to make slight variations in the angle you're pushing and also possibly in the amount of resistance that you're using. And the final version or variation that I would recommend would be position number 5, which takes the ropes and pulleys out even wider, going to make it even tougher. And because the pulleys are a little bit higher and behind you, you might have to move forward slightly more. So it's a really, really high incline, almost like an 80-degree incline or something like that is what they'd call it if it was related to traditional dumbbell work. So there's your 3 positions. The key here, of course, is letting those shoulder blades move up and move down and keeping all of this stable. This is primary. You need to watch if it's bothering your neck to look up and look at your hands. You might just go ahead and make your gaze straight forward. It might be more comfortable in some people's necks. So make those considerations and practice the movement before you actually apply the resistance. This is the standing rear delt row with the cables crossed over. So there's a couple considerations. Number 1, the adjustable arms. It would really be nice if you could go ahead and make them just about the same height as your shoulder, which we've done for Josh here. For him, that ends up being setting number 3. And you'll also notice his arms are crossed, his palms are facing down, the straps are in the D-ring that makes them the longest, and he's keeping those elbows at shoulder height the whole time so that his path of motion is consistent with the height of the pulley and the direction the rope is pulling from. A lot of people, as they come back, have a tendency to drop their shoulders down. Now, you may need to perform, Josh, bring the whole thing down just a little bit so you're coming just, yep. Some people may be more comfortable. Now he's shifted the whole plane of motion down, but notice he's still not dropping his shoulders at the end or dropping his elbows at the end. He's still keeping a nice flat plane. It's just simply a little bit lower than the first one he did. So adjust that to the plane that's more comfortable for you, but try your best to keep it consistent, parallel to the floor from start to finish. Now, he's having to stabilize here. One of the things that's going to help you is decide where to put your feet. Josh has actually stepped off the foot plate just a little bit, but he still has the ball of his foot up on the machine. And you could also try, because the forward pull of the ropes, you could also try kind of a staggered footstep front to back from side to side. That might help some of you remain more stable. Notice his shoulder blades are moving a little bit, keeping the plane, keeping his gaze straight forward so his neck's in a good position. You know, as always, keeping that spine in a great position too. This is working rear delts, all the scapular muscles, spinal muscles, and even some of the deep muscles like even of the rotator cuff. You have at least 3 options for your standing lateral raise on the Revolution. For all of these options, I'm going to recommend that the adjustable arms be all the way down in position number 9. The first one, we're going to face away from the machine, not resting on the machine, but controlling your body position in space, controlling your spine. The straps are adjusted to their longest setting with the D-ring. And then you're simply going to move your arms straight out to the side, maybe a slight bit forward as they come out. Kind of depends on how you're standing relative to the pulleys. The further forward you stand, the more forward you'll need to move to stay aligned. So the key here is not throwing your arms up, not externally rotating, but almost thinking about lifting the elbow even more than you are thinking about lifting the handle or the hand itself. That's perfect, Josh. So you're working middle deltoids, supraspinatus, some of the rest of the deltoid, anterior and posterior, scapular muscles. Now here's another variation. Go ahead and turn around, face me. And facing the machine is going to give you 2 options. One, where you still have the left handle in the left hand, right handle in the right hand, and moving straight out to the side. This is going to allow you to move in a slightly forward and backwards angle. As you can see from the side, his hands at the end or starting position are going to be lined up. His arms are lined up with the rope and the pulley. They're not back here, they're in line. So as he comes back, the rope shows him the path of motion. So that's perfect. Now another option is to cross the handles. Now this is pretty neat because before, from the beginning, he really didn't have any resistance when the rope was right in line with his arm, but here he's still got the rope in line with his arm from this direction, but from where I'm standing, the ropes are crossed, so it's pulling on him, giving him tension even at the beginning. It's a little bit tougher, huh?
A little bit.
So same path of motion, just crossing the cables or crossing the ropes gives him a little starting resistance that he didn't have before. Here's a version of a rear delt row that's going to be performed in the Revolution in kind of a bent over position. So take a look at Josh's spinal position. He's got to bend over here, but notice how he bends at the hips and keeps that spine perfectly straight. Now Josh has seen some clients of his as a trainer that when they bend, they want to do it here. If you can't control your spine yet and keep it more straight and bend only at the hips, then you need to wait on this exercise because you've got to maintain that position throughout each and every rep. So this is going to be the toughest part for some of us. So that's going to be key here. Now he's bending only enough, knees bent, hips bent. He's bending only over enough to make his torso perpendicular to the ropes. That way he can perform this perfect plane of motion. Now remember, it's a rear delt row, so it's, first of all, not just rear delts. There's a lot of other shoulder muscles, scapular muscles, and spinal muscles. But he's bending his arm like a row that's very wide. So his elbows come out straight out, almost directly out from his shoulders, not back by his torso at all. So that's going to be key to perform. He's got a little shoulder blade motion. Now the position of the pulley is going to affect how far he has to bend. He's got his palms facing towards the ground. He's got the straps adjusted or the handle adjusted in the furthest D-ring, and the cable's crossed. The cable's crossed. One other variation we could create, that was in position number 8 with the adjustable arms. Here's position number 7. He doesn't have to bend over quite the same amount because as the pulleys go out, they also go up. So his rope alignment's going to be a little bit different. So this is the other option right here for the bent over version. As you get up any higher, you could basically call it a standing, more erect version of it. So there's 2 nice settings, position number 7 or position number 8 on the adjustable arms. You've got to control the spine. Remember, it's a row leading with the elbows and maintaining the plane of motion. The forearm is in line with the cable or the rope the whole time. This is the standing reverse fly. Now we are going to have the adjustable arms right, as best we can, at the level of Josh's shoulder. For him, I think that's position number 3. Is that what that looks like in there? So your height is obviously going to vary that for your individual exercise. But we're also going to have the cables attached to the D-ring that makes the handle the longest, and we're going to cross the cables. So your right hand's grabbing the left cable and vice versa. Now, the whole key to this is keeping a very slight bend in the elbow because it's like a fly motion. And you're going to be working posterior deltoid, some scapular muscles, trunk muscles, posterior part of the rotator cuff, a whole bunch of those guys. But the key is going to be, can you keep your spine stable? That's going to be the big key. So we keep that nice, safe posture and alignment. You can have the feet up on the edge of the foot plate with the ball of your foot and your heel on the ground. You can stagger your feet forward to back if that helps you stay more stable. Whatever works best for you there. Keep your head facing straight forward and keep this plane of motion. Look how Josh is doing this right here. His arm stays in line with that rope so that as he comes back, his arms end up straight out from his shoulders. He doesn't bring them back and down or back and up. He's not throwing them or turning them or all these other things I see people do. So go nice and slow and learn the motion, that perfect path of motion just like this. Now let me show you something. One of the reasons we cross these is to give Josh resistance from the very beginning. If we didn't cross these, let's let that one go. Yeah, just show him here from the right. If we didn't cross them, he wouldn't have any resistance. He'd have nowhere to go with this thing. If you chose to do this one arm at a time, you could turn your body so that you didn't have to cross him, but in essence, he's making that same resistance as when we were doing both and doing them crossed. So I just want you to realize why we cross these ropes on so many exercises is to give you the resistance through the entire range of motion. Internal rotation from the standing position can be performed from a lot of different settings. So the Revolution really provides you tremendous variation. So watch all these different ones. Now first of all, the initial one, the primary one, I would adjust this adjustable arm to about the height of your elbow when your arm is by your side. That way when you bend your forearm up to create the path of motion, the resistance or the rope is lined up right against you. So the whole thing about all these internal rotation and external rotation exercises is that you're only moving in rotation. Notice as Amy does this, her arm's not moving away from her body. She's not pulling it forward and pulling it backwards. If I put my finger right below her elbow, it's staying right there like a hinge. And that's the important part of this. Now, let me show you some other things we can do. In this setting, notice she had to step away from the machine enough to give herself some tension. You would notice that right off the bat. But watch, as I move the adjustable arm up, it's going to change the angle at which the rope is addressing her. So she's going to move her arm away from her side just slightly and keep it there at that same position. She's not moving her shoulder blade, she's not moving her arm, she just repositioned it to start and then keeps it there so that her arm, her upper arm, always remains perpendicular to the rope. Now watch again. Here's variation number 3. But as this goes higher and the rope addresses her at an angle, she's moved her arm outward. Stop for just 1 second there. So that the upper arm and the rope are always perpendicular to each other, and then again she's keeping it there. And that's the part, that body awareness, where you are in space, what position you're in. That's one of the most important part of things about learning exercises. So let's look at another variation, going up even higher. She's again allowed her arm to change positions. That is great, right there. And now as I go up even higher, I'm going to have her actually scoot towards me a little bit. I may go on up to the top setting. So this could be up here in a number 1 or 0. And she's going to be almost out to 90 degrees at the arm. So between her torso and her arm is about 80, 90 degrees. And her rotation now looks more like a forward and downward motion. And that's one of the great variations allowed for internal shoulder rotation with the Revolution. We're going to take a look at a wide variety of shoulder external rotation exercises with the Revolution. But this is probably the place to start. We've got the arm on setting number 5, it looks like. And the way we came up with that setting was we wanted the pulley about the same height as Amy's forearm as she's standing here with her elbow bent to 90 degrees. That way, she can perform her first exercise just moving straight across external rotation. Now take a look at her arm over here. The key is that as she rotates, she's not moving her upper arm away from her side or across her body. Her upper arm is staying relatively stationary and simply pivoting. Can you see that? She does not have to smash it into her side to make that happen. It can just sit here comfortably beside her torso. But the idea is that upper arm is not moving all over the place as it's spinning. Now, the rope, you can see, is creating the path of resistance, planar resistance, that is perpendicular to her upper arm right now. And that's a key thing to recognize as we make these subtle changes in the adjustable arm position. So as we go down a notch, she's going to move her upper arm out ever so slightly to maintain that 90-degree relationship between the rope and the upper arm. Now that's a tough one because what a lot of people want to do as they rotate now, they're going to want to reach out. And that's not what she's doing. She's still keeping this position and just rotating against that resistance. Let's make another adjustment downward, which is going to require her to bring her arm even out just a tiny bit more. Yep. And let's keep that bend. Yep. So that you're coming right up here. No, don't straighten your arm. There you go. So that it gets tougher and tougher to hold that out there, right? You feeling that? Now, the final one, go ahead and rest for 1 second, Amy. She's going to actually need to face me. And we can put this down on number 8, maybe even number 9. I think number 8 will work fine. But I'm going to have her come straight out to her side now. So her arm is 90 degrees from her torso. And the resistance is pulling almost straight downward, perpendicular to that upper arm. And she's rotating up and back. And again, the key, this is super advanced. She's got to be able to maintain that position, which is tiring in and of itself, plus work in extra rotation against the resistance. This is the lying front raise. So obviously you're going to have the bench on the machine, and as you lie down, go ahead and put your feet up on the little foot plates that are down here by the head of the bench. That allows you to keep your spine in a great position. It's nice and comfortable. And we also want the adjustable arms in position number 8, which is not all the way down. If they were all the way down to position number 9, the rope would probably rub against your leg, or as Amy would see, her leg. So position number 8 is about right. And also the straps. The straps are in the longest D-ring, so you've got the greatest range of motion available. Now, all she's going to do is bring those arms straight up as far as she can. So they're going to stop when they're just about over her chin. Yep, there we go. Now, she's got some choices to make here. For example, right now she's keeping her arms in a path that's parallel to each other. But she could also, because of the width of the pulleys in position number 8, move in a V. So as she comes up, they're moving more towards the midline where her nose is. So it's a great variation. Some of you may find that one of those is more comfortable than the other for your shoulder. Other people may just see them as equal variations to choose from on different workouts. Now we're working anterior deltoid, so a little bit of middle deltoid, a little bit of upper pec maybe even, of course some scapular or shoulder blade muscles. The nice thing is she's not having to work so hard to stabilize her trunk. Now she's not totally free from worrying about it. She still has to tighten her abs to keep from going into some big curve under her low back or something. But this is a great beginner exercise because she doesn't have to worry about the trunk quite so much. She could also do one arm at a time until it gets tired and then do the other arm. She could alternate them or simultaneously alternate. Usually when we alternate, we do one and then do the other. But she could move them both at the same time. It's a great little coordination exercise to get your brain in gear with what your muscles are doing. This is the lying lateral raise. We've got the adjustable arms set to number 9. So they're all the way in. That's going to give you the greatest amount of resistance through the entire range of motion, rather than having them a little bit wider. So that's the recommended position. Notice that Amy's lying flat on her back. She's controlling the curve under her spine so she doesn't have some big arch underneath there. Part of what assists with that is the position she's got her legs in. So with the pulleys in tight like this, it may not be as easy to get your feet up on the foot plate down here, but try to get them up on there because it'll make it so much nicer for you to lay down in your spinal position. Now the lateral raise, all she's going to do, she's got the handles adjusted to the furthest D-ring, take her arms straight out to her sides. Now if you're really weak, you're going to find that you're going to have a tendency to take your arms back behind you some. So don't do that. Don't throw them. Don't rotate them. She's really concentrating more on lifting her elbow out to the side. The handle and the hand just kind of follow along and go along for the ride, in essence. Now, the path of motion is something she can slightly manipulate. And if you take a look right here, she's moving her arms straight out, and they're kind of following the plane of her torso here the whole time. But she could also move up a little bit at an angle, so that from the side you can see her torso's here, but her arms moving in a plane up at an angle here. And she could even go one more notch and go a little bit more forward, because you really have a continuum or a spectrum of planes between what we call a front raise and a lateral raise, you got all these neat angles in between here too. So these are the angles that are leaning more towards the lateral aspect or the sideways motion. But don't just assume that moving straight out to the side is all you have to do or your only option. So take a look at all these different ones and you can try them one arm at a time. You could actually simultaneously alternate all these great variations. But the nice thing is this is wonderful for beginners because controlling the trunk, you still have to control it, but it's just not quite as hard to do to keep your spinal posture. This little exercise is for the scapular motion or shoulder blade motion called protraction. And the primary muscle group involved here is the serratus anterior, which is a little group of muscles that lie right in here. And it's really simple. You're in a traditional bench press position, adjustable arms on number 8, incline for the bench. Make sure everything's locked in place. Then go up to the top of the motion and keep your arms straight. That's really going to be the key here, because if you're bending your arms, you're not going to be able to take advantage of this little small motion that's occurring only in your shoulder blade. So lock those arms and then let your shoulder blade sink all the way into the bench, the resistance pulling you back, and then shove straight forward like you're reaching as far as you possibly can. So this is just one version, and a lot of times people use this in a physical therapy or a rehab setting for these very specific muscles. But the whole key is locked elbows, let your shoulder blades get pulled all the way back and then reach as far as you possibly can forward. Because it's such a short motion, you need to take your time and move very slowly and get everything out of it that you can. And also, just a little tip, if your goal is specific serratus anterior muscles, these little guys right in here that you can kind of see, these little finger-like projections, they also work extremely hard in all your overhead pressing exercises as you reach all the way to the top. So there's a lot of muscular involvement that carries over from these different exercises. This is just one that specifically isolates those guys. This little exercise is called scapular depression, and it really has everything to do with the downward movement of your scapula or your shoulder blades against resistance. And it involves a lot of muscles, some deep muscles clear underneath your pec called the pec minor, the lower parts of your trapezius that come down and create that little V if you've ever looked at an anatomy book, not the big V that's on your torso but up in the middle of your back. So there's a lot of little deep muscles involved here, and it looks like a shrug at first glance, except realize that the resistance, stop right up there, the resistance has pulled Josh upward. He's using his muscles to push downward. And we want the muscles from the shoulder blade. That's why he's keeping his arm locked as straight as he can. So he's not trying to push with his arm muscles, he's trying to shove downward with these deep scapular or shoulder blade muscles. Now we can do this from the seated position like this, or let's show him a standing one, Josh. You could take the bench off. Well, I'm not going to take the time to do that, but you could take the bench off. It'd be easier to stand. But you get from this adjustable arm position of 0 up here, the highest one, you get this great angle of pull whether you're seated or standing. So again, the motion is straight downward. It's not a big motion, so go real slow, take advantage of the full thing, go as far down as you can, and then control the negative aspect or the eccentric upward as far as you can. Scapular retraction is a part of many other exercises where we're pulling our shoulder blades back and pinching them together. You're going to see this as a preparatory movement for your rowing exercises and a lot of things, but take a look. We're going to have the adjustable arms in position number 9. They're all the way down at the bottom so that they're narrow and it allows Josh to bring his arms straight to the front. And if we went outward to position 8, he would have to have his arms out wider, so that wouldn't work right for us. Because it's so low and we want him pulling straight back, he's going to have to bend forward slightly at the hips. Now notice that's why he's not sitting up perfectly vertical, but even as he bent forward, he maintained his spinal position. He did not slouch forward. That is critical, that he keeps his great alignment and does the motion of getting into position at the hips. And then he has to maintain that. This is not going to move. He's not pulling back and forth with his whole torso. It is this little motion. The resistance pulls his shoulder blades forward, but he doesn't slouch. And then he uses these muscles between his shoulder blades, the visible ones and even deeper ones, to create this perfect pinching backwards. Now it's not a pinching up towards his ears. Do that once. So we're not going up towards the ear. So we're going more straight back, like he's pinching my finger right here. And notice he's not throwing his head forward. Sometimes as people bring their shoulders back, they toss their head forward. Show them what that looks like. Try not to do that because it can really, really, really bother your neck up high right here. So he's keeping that great alignment from here to here and doing the pinching here. And the big thing is, as he lets his arms get pulled forward, he's not slouching. Notice he keeps his arms straight the whole time and is really thinking about doing this all in his shoulder blades, not a big pull with the arm muscles. Let's take a look at what we normally call shrugs, but it's really scapular elevation, shoulder blade elevation. And there's not a lot of motion here because we're not trying to pull with our arms, we're trying to leave the arms straight and just do it in the shoulder blades. Now, the direction of resistance on this machine is actually better than gravity would be using a barbell or dumbbell because it's slightly forward. Got the adjustable arms set all the way down in position number 9. We'll take a look at another setting maybe in a minute. But number 9 all the way to the center, we've got the strap shortened to the D-ring closer to the grip. That way, depending on how long your arms are and your overall height, you make sure you've got resistance from the very beginning. Now notice Josh is not shrugging towards his ear. I hear and read that all the time. Put your shoulders towards your ears. But these muscles don't attach in your ears, folks. They attach towards the back of your head. So he's creating this perfect motion that if you extend that line of motion down, you'll notice it's right in line with the cables. In order to do this with gravity, you'd have to lean way forward, and that's really tough for some folks. So here he can stand up perfectly straight and pull towards the back of his head. And as he comes down, notice he's not turning it into a big slouch thing. So he's keeping his posture, which is always important, and pulling towards the back of his head. Now let's see what happens. Do we have the possibility here of moving out to position number 8? Okay, so he still has plenty of travel here. He's got resistance from the beginning. It simply widens his arms a little bit. And for some people, that may be more comfortable. Also, you'll notice at the top of the motion, as you shrug, your shoulder blades don't just go up, they pull towards your head. So that's a nice little variation here, is having the resistance from a little bit wider position and shrugging towards the center and towards the back of the head right there. Perfect. This is the straight arm or stiff arm, you'll read in some books and magazines, the straight arm pull down. And what's being worked here, as the resistance is pulling upward and forward, we're going to use all these what we call shoulder extensors. So that'll be everything from the long head of your tricep to your lats, this teres group up in here, back part of the rotator cuff, some shoulder blade muscles, and of course all your spinal stabilizers. Now look at all these great variations that we've only got on the Revolution. Watch it. Josh starts in a perfect upright position. Go back and let's do that other one. Let's talk about it for 1 second. So he could have his feet staggered front to back. We've got the adjustable arms up here in position 0. And that's a great way for him to start and learn to stabilize. And then we could adjust it by having him step backwards, stick his bottom out, but he bent at the hips. So we'll show them that part. Yeah, go ahead and stand up straight. And so when he bent at the hips instead of doing this bending in the middle up here. That's what we don't want, see? So he's really good at that already. So he bends down like that. Now, what he really did was he created a new starting range of motion for himself. And that's really nice. Now, as you get more and more range, you may find you may not be able to go quite as far backwards, but you're making up for that by the new starting range, which is almost all the way overhead for him. Almost all the way overhead. So it's similar to a pullover exercise if you were looking for an analogous or similar dumbbell exercise. So this is really great. And we have another option in that we can cross the handles. So he's right hand, left handle, that kind of thing. So the cables are crossed. And now he's actually, as he pulls down, he's going to V outward a little bit. So he starts with his hands narrow and V's out. This is really cool. Isn't that a fun one? And then we can even play with one adjustment in the arm width out to position number 1, which works really great with this crossed cable straight arm pull down. Bent over rows on the Revolution are a little bit different than if you were doing them in the gym or with a dumbbell because the resistance is not pulling straight down. So you don't have to bend over as far. The resistance is coming from the pulley that we have adjusted to position number 9. So they're as close in as you can get them and all the way down. And then Josh bends his knees, bends his hips, and keeps his spine straight. And then all he's doing, now watch this. This is really what makes this thing feel great and work great. Do you see how he pulls his shoulder blades at the very beginning of the motion and then pinches them all the way together by the time he's at the end? So it's not like two steps. It's not like shoulder blades and then arms. You see this fluid motion of shoulder blades and arms. But the big difference is, can you do it? Can you do one wrong where you don't retract at the same time? Yep, and then just do the arms. Kind of leave these forward and just do the arms. You see people trying to do this. He can barely even do one wrong. He's so good at doing this stuff. But sometimes people don't do the shoulder blade part, and they just try to bring their arms back, and it makes a huge difference. And you can tell just from seeing what all he's involving by really pinching those shoulder blades together. So there's a bunch of lats, there's a bunch of rear delts, teres, scapular muscles, low back, all this is working. He's even got abs working because tightening the abs is an important part of keeping that spine stable. Now, let's say that this is not the best place for a beginner. Why? Because all the stabilization stuff. So he could drop one side, and we put the seat up here towards the front, and he can use that to support with one arm and do a one-arm row. And even with the one-arm row, he could even get a little twist into his torso if he wanted to. There you go. You can't do that with both arms. And notice, oh, something I forgot to tell you. The strap, the handle, is adjusted to the D-ring that's closer to the grip. That way you can get a little more reach into the thing. But my gosh, there's so many great exercises here. But I'm telling you, take the time to take off a little bit of weight. Don't worry about how much weight right now. And get this scapula arm motion working together. And you'll really, really feel it. This is the lying pullover. And take a look at the different variations we've got because it's really cool in the Revolution. First, you'll notice we're at position number 9 all the way down at the bottom, the narrow position. I've also got the handles in the D-ring that's closest to the grip so that he can bring his arms back as far as possible. And Josh has scooted way down on the machine. His knees are even over the side of the leg extension, which allows him to extend his arms up all the way for the starting position. Now he's going to move as far as he can through the range of motion. Probably the big thing to look for is what he's doing with his shoulder blades. A lot of times when people do this, they throw their shoulders real far forward, and he's kind of keeping his shoulders near the bench backwards, especially as he finishes the motion. So up here, he's reaching up with his shoulder blades, but back here, he's retracting them, pulling them down into the bench, and bringing his arms down towards his pelvis. Now the other variation, surprisingly, is you can change the arm position, the adjustable arm position, to the exact opposite and create a really neat variation on this exercise. But let me show you a trick. We're going to lengthen the strap so that he can move a little further. But the way I set this up to begin with, I put both D-rings through the snap hook to begin with, so I don't have to unsnap one and then snap the other. I can save time by just unsnapping, if I can get my fingers to work, by just unsnapping the short one, and it extends right out to the long one, and now he's ready to go. Now, what does this do? Well, it's obviously a shorter range of motion. You can't start from clear up here. But it increases the amount of resistance that he has down at the bottom, because previously when he got to the bottom, that cable was laying right along his arm because the pulley was down here. And that meant the bottom position was very, very easy due to the mechanics of the rope pulling on him. So here the rope is pulling at an angle. When he finishes, that increases the resistance at the bottom. So these are very different variations. One with more range and at some points less resistance. This one with less range but a little bit more resistance, not because we added resistance to the power pack, but because of the new angle. So the mechanics and where the rope is pulling is critical to the variation of the exercise. This exercise is called the lying lat fly. Fly because, you know, traditionally on flies we keep the elbow in one position with a very slight bend in it. And this is more like a fly version of a lat pull down, if you will. Take a look at what I mean. We've got a lot of options with this one because of the Revolution and its adjustable arms. But notice we got the strap in its longest D-ring setting for the handle part, right? And then take a look at Josh's position way down the bench there. That's allowing him to bring his arms up a little further than if he was scooted down this way towards the head end of it. Now, I'm going to show you the big changes in the adjustable arm setting. I'm in number 5, I think it is right now. the widest setting, and he's pulling from, stop for 1 second, Josh. His arms are up, headed towards the pulley. Can you see that? Always look at the rope and the pulley and the direction that it's coming from. And he's going to angle down towards his bottom, completing that angle of the rope as he performs the motion. So this position number 5 does 2 things. He's not able to go maybe as high as on some of these other settings, but it's keeping the rope way out to the side, which is increasing the resistance a little bit at the bottom position. Now as I alter this down to maybe number 6, we ever so slightly start to change the path of motion. So his hand doesn't end up coming way up here above him. It's more straight out to the side because the pulley is more down at his level. Still a super exercise. Here's number 7. Take a look at how the path changes again. Now the pulley really is down at his level, and he's coming straight towards the pulley and straight towards his hips. There's no angle to the path at all. These are all great variations, and they're all virtually working the same muscles, just a little bit different stresses on the joint, and maybe slight contribution changes from muscles. Probably the bottom position, the lowest you'd want to go, would be position number 8, which is not all the way in to the narrowest setting. But that might even allow him to come up a little further in terms of range of motion. So he could come up a little bit higher. And when he gets to the bottom now, he basically loses most of the resistance because the cable ends up lying right against his arm. So he's lost a lot of the resistance here. So that's a neat alteration in the resistance profile, in other words, where it's hard and where it's easy, as well as in the plane of motion, all from variations on the adjustable arms. With the adjustable arms of the Revolution, we have a lot of different variations of lat rows, rowing exercises that we can do. And the first one is putting the adjustable arms down in position number 9, the lowest, closest setting. And you notice Amy's got her feet on the floor because with the pulleys down here, your toes up on the plate right here might actually get in the way. So we're going to try this. She's sitting up perfectly straight, and let's do a couple reps this way. Notice she's keeping her posture and her alignment, and watch what she does. This is always the trick for a row, is pinching those shoulder blades together as she brings her arms back. And as her arms go forward, she lets those shoulder blades go forward. But she does not lose her spinal alignment. She does not slouch at any point in time, and she keeps this fluid motion of pinching and bringing the arms back all together. That is perfect. Now, we can adjust this a little bit by having Amy bend at the hips, and she can make her torso a little more perpendicular to the rope. So there's one variation. Another variation is if you felt like your thighs were in the way of your rope and handle travel, you could take this bench off, bring the sliding seat forward a little bit so that you could still be seated in the same position. But that way your knees and thighs could come closer together without the bench being between them. So that's an option you can keep in mind. Now, if you're using so much weight that you feel like you have to have your feet up on the foot plates, so go ahead and put your feet up there, Amy. See, she's got her feet up there now because if you're using a lot of weight, it's trying to pull you forward. You're going to slide on the seat there. So now she's got her feet to help her with that. So I just went outward to number 8 with the adjustable arms. Notice, by the way, I should have told you this in the beginning, that I've got the handles adjusted to the point where they're at the closest D-ring near the grip. That allows her to really reach forward without bottoming out on the rope. So again, watch the important part, scapula or shoulder blade and arms all moving forward and backward at the same time. She's not rocking forward and backwards in the torso. You see a lot of people do this whole thing and that whole thing. That you might do on the aerobic rowing exercise, but not on this one where we're focusing on these muscles. This is the high lat row. Now we've adjusted the arms up to 0, to the highest setting, all the way together. And you can see that that's allowing Amy to reach upwards. So it's not as high as a pull down might be. It's kind of halfway in between a row and a pull down. A tremendous variation. It's going to allow her a little more range and a little more change within the lat muscle, which is a huge fan. So she's going to sit upright and do this row. And notice that when she does this, her shoulder blades are pulled opposite the direction of the cables or the ropes. So she's pulling down and squeezing her arms all down at the same time. As she comes forward, go real slow. Can you show them how their shoulder blade's pulling this way? And then on the way down, super slow, where she does this fluid motion of shoulder blade and arm together. Now we could change this just a little bit and create variation by having her lean back slightly and keeping it there. So she's not yanking and leaning back as she moves, changing every time. She's just kind of keeping it there. And you see all the same great motion. It's another variation in angle. By changing her body, it becomes a little closer to perpendicular to her torso. The ropes do. You can see that? And I'll tell you what, if you, and you know whether you can do this or not, if you're super controlled, I'll let you, I'll give you the permission, as if you needed it, to actually sit up straight at this end and do the torso motion as you go through the motion. But you see how controlled she's doing that? She's starting the motion with these before she moves her torso. She's not moving the torso to make it easier, like slinging it and then throwing the arms into it. So this is not a license to cheat as much as it is to make it a more compound or integrated exercise by adding torso and hip movement into your upper body movement. We have one more variation by going a little tiny bit wider. That just changes the angle not only in terms of width but also a little bit lower from that initial setting. So it's the same type of thing, just a different pulley setting. I don't know that I'd go much wider than that because you end up without much motion due to the change in width and it's not much of a row anymore. So there's your two options for the high row, position 0, position 1. This is shoulder extension, which is kind of a version of the straight arm pull down that we've seen before in the standing position. But we're just seated and we're in the position number 1. So it's not all the way up with the adjustable arms. And we've got the strap extended out to the longest possible setting for the handle. That way, that as she pulls on the rope, she can get as far back as possible before we run out of line here. So the idea is to sit up pretty straight and not be moving, swaying forwards and backwards. And keep your arms straight. Go ahead and lock it. And bring it back as far as you can. She's still going to move her shoulder blade a little bit with this. You'll notice the little bit of scapular motion forward and the scapular motion backwards, kind of pinching as she brings her arm down. The great variations on this that Amy's so good at is alternating so that she can do one and then the other. And she can simultaneously alternate so that she's not just letting one rest, which is another version of alternation. So instead of just doing this and then doing this, she's moving them both at the same time. This is really cool. And then, of course, if she really wanted to, she could just put one completely down and just do one arm and finish it and then do the other. So anyway, there's some tremendous options. And really for this setting number 1, if you go all the way up to 0, she's probably going to have a tendency to run into her leg with the thing because of the narrow direction the rope's coming from. So give this a try. This is the wide lat pull down. Now, even though there's not a lat tower on the machine, these adjustable arms all the way at the top create the same direction of resistance that we need for any pull down. Now, depending upon your height, you might have to make some adjustments here relative to the seat and the angle of your body to get the angle of the pull down that you want. So take a look at this. In the starting position, number 1, I've got the handle shortened, right, to the D-ring closer to the grip. And then that allows Amy to reach all the way up. We still have some resistance on her. We're not bottomed out up here. And the rope is in line with her arm, is in line with her torso there. So that's just about like having the rope straight over your head if you were standing up or seated in a vertical position. It's the same thing. She's just angled a little bit. Now I have the seat back that you use for the leg press. I have it on the front of the sliding seat with the sliding seat locked in a very specific position to allow her this range, and she can rest on this if she wants to. Now she doesn't have to. We could take that off of there and she could use her trunk muscles to maintain that position as well. That would be considered maybe a little bit more advanced. But watch as she goes through the motion. The first thing I'd like for you to watch, do it real slowly for her, Amy. Her shoulder blades are up here at the top, but the first thing you're going to notice is these shoulder blades go down. Not necessarily together like they did in a row, not a pinch backwards, but a pinch downwards towards her waistline. And that motion in the shoulder blade continues as her arm moves toward her side. So she's thinking about, it'd be almost as if she said, hey, I'm going to smash his hand with my arm. So that's what you're thinking. Don't worry about how far your hand or your handle comes down. You're not trying to touch your shoulder with the handle or anything like that. That's not as important as the range created at your shoulder joint by bringing your upper arm towards your torso. So that is the perfect way to do it right there. Now, one thing you might find is that If you were taller and with longer arms like I am, I simply might have to move this seat and the whole scenario back to one of these other holes back here. That would adjust it backwards, and I would have to lean forward just a tiny bit more. That's the only change that I have to make, and I would still have the ability to do this same perfect exercise. Now I want to kind of show you what she is working as she does this. Not only all these lower scapular muscles like lower trap and that kind of thing, but also your lats, the fibers running down, some elbow flexors, all those guys right there. So there's a lot of choices for you to make even within the wide grip pull down in terms of how you want to perform it and how you need to perform it based upon your arm length and your torso length. This is the narrow pull down. Now, for the pull down on this machine where we don't have a lat tower, we don't have to compromise because the adjustable arms come all the way up to position 0, the narrow setting, and I've got the hand grips at the closest setting so that they're shortened to this D-ring near the grip. And something else you can do, you don't have to, but it's kind of helpful for some people to put the seat back that you use for the leg press onto the front of the sliding seat, and that way you can lean against the way I've asked Amy to do here. Now she's strong enough that I could get rid of this entirely, and she could control her trunk and control this angle. But until you get good at that, you might use this, or you could just use it as variation, choosing to do it this way one day, and maybe because you're using this and not having to use so much muscle to control your trunk, you might be able to use a little more weight on a given day, but then the other day you think, no, I want to really work on my trunk muscles in the process, so you lighten the weight a little bit and get rid of the back pad. Anyway, the path here is more like your arms are moving parallel. See? They're not moving wide. So as she goes through this motion, her arms are just going right outside the width of that seat back, about shoulder width. And the big thing here that you notice is she is moving the shoulder blade down towards her belt line as she moves her arm. Can you do one where people do it where they kind of leave their shoulders up by their ears? See, that is what you see all the time in the gym. And they're not really moving their shoulder blades. And they're not getting the contraction and the function of the muscles and the joints that they need to. So really take the time to learn the shoulder blade thing. It's hard because you can't readily see your shoulder blades while you're sitting here facing ahead. So you've got to kind of take the time. You might even have to do this little scapular depression thing where you just learn that by itself and go, oh, that's what that feels like. Now I know, and now I can put it together and make one fluid motion, not two jerky ones, but one fluid motion into this pull down. And she's thinking about bringing her arm by her side and squeezing it back. So the only other thing I can tell you is that if you were taller like me and had longer arms and a longer torso, I would probably have to scoot this bench back and lock it in one of those holes further from the cables here. Otherwise, I would probably be running into the end with my handle. I wouldn't be able to reach as far as I wanted. So that's the only other thing you might have to adjust. Otherwise, this is just a tremendous, tremendous pull down. This is called a mid-range pull down, and that doesn't mean you're moving through a partial range. That means it's not in one of the extremes of the more traditional pull downs. It's not the wide pull down, and it's not the narrow pull down. And this range in here, these options, mid-range between those two, are great places for your shoulder to function. A lot of people are more comfortable here than in either one of the traditional pull downs. So notice that for the pull down, we've got the adjustable arms all the way up. They're all the way up to 0, and we've got this in the shortened setting at the handle so that she can really reach forward. The seat back sometimes comes in handy. You know, we use this for leg presses on the other side of the seat, but here it allows Amy to lean forward on it if she wants. But she's also good enough that we could remove that and she could just hold her trunk there too. You need to find out how that works for you. But the big thing I want you to see is that the range, this plane that she's moving through. Take a look. This would be the wide version. See? And this would be the narrow version. So we're saying that between this and this, there's a bunch of options. And there's exactly in the middle, and that's what she's doing right there. And it really feels a little bit different, doesn't it? It's a great thing for your shoulders. Now watch the sequence of events here, where as she's doing this, she lets these shoulder blades go down towards her waistline as she's bringing her arm down. So nothing has really changed from any of the other pull downs in terms of the sequence of events, the unified fluid motion between the shoulder blade and the arm. The big thing that's changed is this plane that we're moving through, not being by her side, not being totally away from her side, but being right in between. We have a variety of arm curls in the standing position. And for each one, we're going to manipulate the grip or the handle, and we're also going to manipulate, for some of them, the adjustable arm. So pay close attention, because there's going to be very specific things for specific types of curls. Now, the first, more standard curl is typically performed with the palm facing forward the whole time. So there's Josh. The big thing that I would like for you to realize is consistent among all of these curls is that the upper arm is not moving. This is the hardest thing to do because people like to try to move a lot of weight rather than work the muscles that they're really interested in. So you'll see people bending their whole torso. Show them that, Josh, where people do the whole body thing. Folks, that does not enable your arm muscles to work any harder. That uses everything else. And then you'll see people as they come up, they move their whole arm up. And that's shoulder muscles. That's not helping. That's taking away from it. So let me just say now and have it cover all of these versions of curls we're going to cover is this upper arm, where it starts is where it stays. So the only motion is the forearm moving at the elbow in this nice little circle or arc. So you see he's not really curling up. Watch how he's curling forward and up and in. Think about that, and this upper arm will stay still. So now, here's the first one. Palm is up the whole time. He's got two settings that work well for this. Number 8, definitely not number 9. Number 9 is too narrow. You have this thing called a carrying angle. And when you turn your palm to the front, which is the whole thing we're trying to do here, your arm has a bend in it. It's the way we're built. So you cannot go with a really narrow setting here. Please don't do that. So start with number 8, even potentially number 7. See? Will allow for that carrying angle perfectly. So there's a great curl where we're maintaining the palm up or supinated position, arm number 8 or arm adjustment number 7 on each side. Now, let's go back and take a look at this thing you've heard before called a reverse curl, where you're simply turning over and it's going to be palm down. Because of what happens in the body when your palm is down, so you don't have that bend anymore that you do when you're here. You don't have that bend. So you could go to this narrow setting of number 9 and do a reverse curl, no problem. Now, if you're a wider person, you may choose to bump that out one notch to number 8, and that'll work great for a reverse curl too. I'd like for you to realize there are very slight differences in muscular contribution from the arm muscles, the biceps, the brachialis, and the brachioradialis, with each one of these curls. It's most dramatic probably, I mean, you're not getting rid of your bicep, but the thing you'll probably notice most when you flip your arm all the way over is that you start noticing more of the brachioradialis. You haven't eliminated this, but you're just noticing this more, so there's a slight change in what's working. So rest for a second there, Josh. The next one I want to show you is the hammer curl. So what we're going to do is allow this grip to slip to this more vertical thing, and you might even have the grip itself might even slide on the webbing as you're doing it. I don't know. Just see how it works. But Josh has actually grabbed all the way around. But the idea is now that we're keeping the thumb up, so it's not palm down, it's not palm up. It's palms facing each other. And again on this, we've got two possible settings. You could be at number 9, the closest one, because when your palm is in this position, your arm doesn't have the carrying angle. That only exists in the first one we looked at. So you could be here, or again, a little bit wider person, depending on your skeletal structure, you could go out to number 8. Works just fine. So there's 3 versions of the curl so far. The final one is this. I'm going to have him have the same position. You can go ahead and grab these just like you were. So let me show him. We're going to turn this handle so it's in line with the webbing. It's not across it like this. And he's going to grab it so that all that webbing that's pulling on him and the rope is coming off of his pinky side of his hand. And now this gets kind of neat because he can rotate or supinate as he curls and actually have resistance against the supination part. You see, normally we only have the resistance, like if you have a dumbbell and you do supination, there's a resistance on each side of your hand, each side of the dumbbell, so the turning part is not resisted, which is fine. And you could do that here by going back to your normal grip position, right? And then as he turns, this thing could kind of turn in his hand. He could just kind of do that kind of thing. See where it's still pulling off of both sides of his hand. And that's great too. That is a great option. I'm not saying it's not valuable, but just a little tricky thing you can do with these cool Revolution handles is create resistance another way, and that's a lot harder, isn't it?
A little bit.
Now, because we're ending up in the supinated position at the top, I'm going to recommend that you again go with position number 8 or even position number 7 for this rotating or supinating curl. This is a variation on a curl that's a little bit different, and the arms, the adjustable arms of the Revolution really make it possible for us. But we can bring the adjustable arm up to your shoulder height, which for Josh is about right here. He's on maybe number 3. And reaching straight out to the side, not to the front, like some people do for concentration curls and preacher curls and all those kinds of things, but out to the side. And the big trick here is curling forward and keeping the upper arm right where you started so that the elbow is pointing towards this pulley. So we don't want to let the whole arm go forward. We don't want to let the arm go backwards. Nothing really changes in this part. It's all the nice arc generated by the forearm moving in a little circle around the hinge at the elbow. So you can, in the process of doing this, decide if you want to maintain this supinated position, which in this case looks like palms facing Josh. But you could also go to the hammer grip, just with a little spin right here. Just go ahead, there you go. And so there's a hammer grip with this same thing. And make those little changes if you want. But the nice thing is the arms out to the side, creating very slight variation in the participation of the muscles. But realize you're still working your bicep to brachioradialis and brachialis, all 3 of the primary elbow flexors. Look at our variations on pushdowns. Now this is a tricep exercise, elbow extension. And the big trick here is going to be keeping the upper arm stable the whole time. So you're not moving your whole arm and shoulder around, not trying to use every muscle in your body to push on the weight. You're just working right here by controlling all of this and only seeing motion, forearm moving in a little circle around the elbow. Here's what I mean by a circle. Watch. She slowly pushes down, and the thing's about pushing backwards. That's that circle. That's that arc. Now, we've got the machine, the Revolution, adjusted to 0 here, which is the highest setting. And that works out just fine for Amy and her shoulder width and everything. So she can also, oh, the strap. I got to tell you, the handle. There's no reason necessarily to have this in the shorter setting, because you just have to reach up here and pull it down further to your starting position. So you can have it in the lengthened position here. It's going to work out great for most people. If you're really tall, you might not be able to do that because your hand's going to be so much higher and everything. But the other thing to look at is that you have the option of a little bit wider position going to number 1 here. That can work for some of us too. Now, we can obviously make some little changes, like she could just let go of one of those entirely and do it all with one arm, making sure to maintain all this the same. She could alternate. She could simultaneously alternate, which those are 2 different things. So all these great choices, but look what happens every single time. She's so good at keeping this still. And by doing that and straightening all the way out, go all the way straight, that's when she really feels that contraction right there, okay? So there's a couple options: the regular push down, the single arm push down with all those little alternating and all that stuff. And then, you know what else you can do? You've seen people use ropes in the gym, that little rope that's in a V shape and they grab it. And the thing that allows them to do is to change from a starting narrow position to an ending wide position. And we can do that here. I'm going to go back to the 0, the top position. And then you can even switch this to more of the hammer position by slipping the handle. And then everything is directed outward in a V. So as you come up to the top, Amy's hands are here, and she goes out, they're outside of her hips out here. Still keeping all this the same. That's a great exercise. A very popular tricep exercise is the kickback, and we have a lot of variations we can do on the Revolution for that exercise. And the first thing I'd like for you to realize is really just a variation on a push down. We're just no longer pushing down. We're pushing backwards. But the body position relative to the torso compared to the arm and what you're moving, it's all the same thing as a push down. So take a look. We're going to start with position number, what is this, 2? Position number 2. And I've got this set up so the strap is in the shortest setting on the D-ring, and it's in the hammer grip type vertical setup. So Amy can slip her hand through here and have her kind of a thumb up kind of a thing. And she can also use the arm to help stabilize. She can just kind of put her feet forward and back there a little bit, whatever's comfortable, put the hand here, and then she's going to bring her upper arm back beside herself, beside her torso, and then from there do the straightening. Okay, so there's the first version of the tricep kickback. For every single one of these, the key is going to be this. She's keeping her upper arm still. She's not letting it move that way as she comes back and move this way as she comes forward. So she's really good at body awareness and understanding the position she's in and keeping it that way. Sometimes this is where mirrors can be helpful too. If she had a mirror over here on a wall, like you might have in your home, she could see where her arm position was being maintained. So let me move this real quick, Amy, down to position number 3. And all she's going to do as we move this, she's going to alter her angle a little bit of her body, and she'll be kicking even more backwards instead of downward at a little bit of an angle. So there's number 3, and I'll adjust this as you're going, and they can just watch the position at the same time change. So there we are down. Looks like number 4. Yep. And she's pushing backwards now for sure. I'll tell you, this is a lot more effective than a dumbbell kickback. A lot more effective, because a dumbbell, you know, if she was right here with a dumbbell in her hand, there'd be no resistance. That dumbbell would be balanced below her elbow. Here, that dumbbell would actually be resisting her biceps. That wouldn't be working at all. So not only does she get more range, she also gets a better resistance profile than having that dumbbell be heavy at one point and nothing at another point. One final setting, number 5, where she could bend over even a little bit more. Last one for the standing version. And now she's pushing straight back there. There you go. Okay. Now we've got one more. We've got a kneeling version. This is great. I'm going to go down to setting number 8. Next to the bottom, she can just put her hand on the bench, knee on the bench, keep her back flat, bring her arm in position. Like I said, this is so much more effective than the old dumbbell version because of the resistance profile and the way that the revolution generates a new line of force. This is a neat variation of a tricep exercise or elbow extension, and we could call it a cross tricep extension. And really all we're doing is setting the pulley at about Amy's shoulder height, pretty close to it, and then the rope will travel across, and she's going to hold this other arm into a position of abduction, we call it, which simply means that the arm is away from the side, but the upper arm is going to be in line with the cable, and then she's just going to do kind of a push out instead of a push down, keeping that upper arm perfectly still the whole time, using a hammer grip. That's all there is to it. So it's just a neat variation with a little bit different length in the long head of the tricep. All the other heads of the tricep, the medial and lateral, they're all doing the same thing all the time anyway. So this is a neat little variation that we can even change a little bit again. I'm going to go up one notch above her shoulder, and in response to that, she adjusts her upper arm angle to again be in line with the rope, and there you go. This is a really neat combination bicep and tricep kind of thing, or more appropriate arm curl, arm extension exercise, performed at the same time, opposite on each side. Now take a look at setting this up. This is real important. On the curling side, on her left side right now, obviously we'll switch this around later for a workout. On the curling side, you can have the adjustable arm either at number 9, which is all the way down, or number 8, which is slightly out one notch, but the handle, the grip, needs to be adjusted to the closest setting so that you don't bottom out when you reach down to finish your curl or to start your curl, either way. The big thing is that if you had longer arms or if you were shorter, this position number 8 might not work, because as it's out, the pulley also comes up and you might bottom out. So someone that was shorter than Amy might have to put it number 9 for sure. She actually has 2 options. On the extension side, specifically put it on number 1. We don't want it all the way up on 0 because that would be going over the top of her shoulder. It's going to work better probably on number 1. And what she's going to need to do on this side is keep this upper arm angled. She's not going to be able to hold it down here like a normal push down, because if she does, the resistance ends up pulling backwards on her, not doing what we hope for. What we want is for it to be at a position that it doesn't end up pulling backwards on her arm at the end. So here's what this is going to look like. She's going to curl on one side and extend on the other side. So it takes a little bit of brain stuff going on up there. to get that coordinated. Now, if you really want to mess with your head, you ready for this, Amy?
I don't know.
Hold the curl at the top. Hold the curl at the top. Now, go down with both of them at the same time. How about that? I'm easily amused. Anyway, there's a lot of ways that you can alter and manipulate and vary this really neat exercise that we could call opposition in a sense, because you're working opposite muscles on the opposite sides. From adjustable arm position number 9, which is the furthest one down and together, or number 8, you could perform both of these next exercises. These are wrist exercises, primarily wrist flexion and extension. And so what we're going to do is have Amy come up to an elbow bend of about 90 degrees. And that sometimes is the big trick, is trying to keep that while you're doing these little wrist exercises. She's going to start with wrist extension. So she's got palm down. She's simply bringing her knuckles up and kind of towards her bicep. Okay? And then the alternative to that is simply wrist flexion. So she could just turn this right over, palms up, and now she's taking her fingertips towards her bicep. Now, the thing I'm going to ask you to do on this exercise specifically, sometimes people doing wrist flexion, they want to let this roll down a little bit. They let it roll down because they're thinking, well, I can do finger flexion and then my wrist flexion. The thing I'm going to ask you to do is not to do that, because sometimes when people release their finger grip a little bit, they release their wrist muscles a lot, and that really makes them hyperextend their wrist. Can you feel that? So when you keep your grip, you keep the tension in here, and you control the range of motion in your wrist with a lot greater degree of security and not going to the extreme of motion right there. This version of a triceps extension is performed on the inclined bench. Okay? Now the biggest thing on the inclined bench is always how you get the handle or the weight into position. So Josh has done the right thing. He reached back, curled it up, and then moved his arm up into position rather than just reaching back and trying to yank it out there, okay? Because that can really bother your shoulder sometimes. So he did it the right way. I've got the adjustable arms in position number 9, which means they're really close in here. And he's got a palm up kind of a grip, which in this case is pronated. The big trick here is positioning the upper arm high enough that the cable doesn't come up and hit your shoulder. Now that actually, see, he could actually do it from there. There's an option. Still not going to hit his shoulder. He could be here. So there's a couple positions, but once he chooses a position, he's keeping it right there. That upper arm is not moving this way as he goes along or this way as he goes along. He's keeping it there. Wherever he starts is where he stays. But there are a couple choices. Now I'd like for you to try to go all the way straight if you can. All the way straight. See, now look what happens right there, because when he stops just a little bit before that, not the same amount of activity. That's the hard part, right? You really feel that contraction? So there he goes, all the way straight. We're not throwing it. The nice, slow, steady contraction, and here's what you might think about even, is tightening and squeezing into position. There you go. That makes a big difference too when you start thinking about things like that. So anyway, there's a couple different options. He could also, and try this one too, move to more of that hammer grip type of thing. I'm going to help him slide the webbing through since he's already in position. But you could do this before you even laid down and try to slide the webbing through on the handle so you're in hammer grip. And now, some people find that by far the easiest way, because when they turn their palms towards the ceiling, sometimes your elbow kicks out, and it's hard for them to keep everything in position. But when you keep your palms facing each other, it's really easy to keep those upper arms pretty parallel and pointed up to the ceiling the whole time. So try those different things and see what works best for you. Some of you may be wide enough also that it seems to work best maybe from position number 8. You might try that, but I really think for most of us, position number 9 is going to be the key. This is the cross tricep extension, which you're only going to be able to do with one arm at a time, unilaterally. And probably the biggest part of this is watching how we get into position. This is pretty cool. So Josh is going to reach back and grab with an overhand, but he's not going to grab the handle. See, he's going to grab the webbing up here, and then that leaves the handle free for him to grab with the other hand, which is the one we're using, see? It's across his body. So now, he's in position. He's going to work on holding this upper arm stable the whole time. And this is a big trick too. I've got the adjustable arm set on number 8. Because if it was number 9, this cable, or the rope, I'm sorry, would be wrapped around the bench and rubbing on this. So I've got it in number 8, the first one out here, and that allows the rope to freely pass by everything. Your arm position will also affect that, because if Josh, hang on, if Josh was over here, see how it would come across his face? So he's chosen an arm position from his previous experience that helps him know how he can straighten out his arm and still stay clear of the rope. So he's keeping this stable and holding it there, palms facing him, straightening all the way out, full extension. So that position number 8 is going to work the best for that one. Of course, we want to do the other side after we finish. This exercise has been around forever, and it's called the French press for some reason. Don't ask me where it got its name, but traditionally it's performed as a tricep exercise from an overhead position. So getting your handles from the revolution into position are critical. Do it just exactly like Josh did, where he curled all the way up, and then it's easy to rotate the arm upward when you've got the arms bent that much. The adjustable arms are in the bottom position, number 9. The straps are extended out all the way, and then the trick is going to be to keep that upper arm relatively stable. Now that is hard to do when you're overhead, and most people will see a little bit of upper arm motion. There's just no way around it. Try to minimize it as much as you can, but it still needs to be comfortable, and it has a lot to do with how much your shoulders will get into position, okay? You can also adjust your position on the seat. You'll notice Josh is sitting a good 15 inches in front of the vertical part of the machine here. So you could even adjust that even further if you felt like, well, I can't get my arm up high enough and I feel like the rope's rubbing on me. So watch as he moves up. Now, see that rope stays a little bit further from his shoulder even when his arm is all the way straight. So you can make those little adjustments as you get more familiar with the exercise. The seated arm curl can be performed on the revolution with the bench flat, the arm, adjustable arm, adjusted out to number 7. It's a great place to start. And then you kind of need your body angled on the bench so that your arm is pointed off to this side, and your back is more, and your seat is more towards the other side of the bench. So you're angled across it just a little bit. Now, here's the big thing. If you're going to use your knee to rest your arm up on, put the end of your upper arm on your knee, not down here on your forearm, because that's going to be moving, and not on your elbow where that bone's sticking out. Right up here, kind of at the end of your tricep, the upper arm, where Josh has got it right there. He's got his arm pointed toward the pulley, so the rope is following in line with his arm the whole time, and he's doing his best to hold his upper arm still. Now you might think, well, how hard is it to hold your upper arm still when it's setting on your leg? Well, the thing is, once we rest that on there, you're going to find this, because it's not so easy to move the upper arm down and up anymore, we end up moving the shoulder up and down, which accomplishes the same form of cheating, if you will. So try to hold all of that still. And curl, you can curl towards you up vertically. You can curl almost across while you're doing that. Show them that, Josh. So you've got a couple little options there. And then, if you want to try a version without resting on your knee, you can put both legs down or you can straddle the bench. Either way, go ahead and put both legs over here on this side. It'll be fine, Josh. Now you're just going to sit there and point the arm towards, nope, just right back where you were. Yep, and point towards. And then he's just going to hold his arm there in space using his shoulder muscles to maintain that position. So it's not much different in terms of its total effectiveness on the elbow flexors is the same. It's just the stabilization requirements are a little bit tougher. So there's several variations for you for the seated arm curl. Now in the seated position, we've got a couple variations of wrist exercises, and you don't have to, but you can use your legs, your thighs, as kind of a bench and rest your forearms on there. So the first version, with the adjustable arms down in position number 9 and the straps in the shortest D-ring, so the D-ring closer to the grip, we're going to do wrist flexion. Josh's entire forearm is resting on his thigh, with his hand out beyond his knee so it can move at the wrist. Okay, get it out there far enough that your wrist is not bumping into your knee right there. And his forearms are parallel to each other as he does wrist flexion. Now, as you're doing wrist flexion, something I'm going to ask you to keep in mind is not to let the fingers roll down, because some people think, oh, well, while I'm doing wrist flexion, I'm going to do finger flexion also. The only problem with that is that as you go into eccentrically letting them uncurl, sometimes, almost every time, we relax the wrist muscles and you end up in a significant amount of hyperextension of the wrist and no support for all these little bones that are precariously hanging out in there. So keep that grip tight as you control into the eccentric portion, and then pull those fingertips towards the bicep or towards the elbow for full flexion. Now we're going to make a very slight change as we flip over for the wrist extension exercise, because when we do that, notice Josh's elbows kind of went outward, and you want that to happen. It's virtually impossible to turn your palms all the way over facing the floor while keeping your forearms parallel to each other. So let those flare out a little bit this time, and now same thing, only backwards, knuckles towards the elbow or knuckles towards the bicep for wrist extension. For the lying curl, you have so many variations because of these adjustable arms. You see, if you were doing a standing curl, it would be like the cable coming from all of these different positions around me. Because I'm lying, I can adjust the arms and the pulleys up and down like this. I can address the curl from so many directions. We're going to show you all of them here in 1 second. But first, take a look at the 4 basic variations of curls. Josh is doing the first curl in a supinated or palm-up position right now, and maintaining that supinated position the whole time. Now, here are the keys. The starting setting is number 8. So it's not all the way down, because that would bump into his leg. So it's number 8. And the big thing for every single version of this is that that upper arm is not moving, folks. So many times people, as they start to lift, they bring their arm backwards, then they bring their arm forwards. They do all that kind of stuff. Try your best to do just like Josh and keep that upper arm stable. It does not have to smash into the side to stay stable either. You can hold it out in space to simply control its motion so it's static as only the forearm moves at the elbow. So there's number 1. We've got a reverse grip curl, right, where you could just flip over, palms facing away from you, and perform the same thing from the same setting with the same arm position. He could do a hammer curl where he just simply adjusts. There you go. He's adjusted his webbing. And then we could do a supinating curl where he's actually starts in kind of a pronation or neutral, pronation or hammer, and then curls or turns his palm and forearm as he performs the curl. But notice with each one of those how perfect he is at keeping that upper arm in the same place. All right, now here's the first variation with these arms. Is I can simply bring it out a little bit to number 7. And all he's going to do is adjust his arms out a little bit, because that's the primary change that was created. So you can't see that too much, but you could kind of envision that as the pulley went wider, his arms went wider, and he's curling from there. Now, as they get wider, they also start to get higher. So he may actually, as he moves his arm away from his body, move it up a little bit. You can see his elbow pointed towards the pulley right here, and his upper arm in line with the rope, kind of. Position number 5. So now you can see he's definitely elevated his arm angle to a new starting position based upon the pulley's relationship now. And he's wider than he was before because of the width of the pulleys that's been generated through the arc that they move. You can go up to number 4. Take a good look at this. Again, not any change in width this time because it hasn't gotten any wider, but they've gotten higher. So he's more forward or up with his arm angle. Okay? Now, number 3, you can see the similar change progressing. Number 2, where he's really angled up towards me now, but his arms are actually not as wide as they were because the pulleys are becoming narrower as they reach the top. And the highest angle, and Josh is going to be glad we're done, the highest angle we're going to do this is position number 1. We will not go all the way to 0 because that'll be too narrow, and that'll force his hands together like this. So, for this standard curl with the palm up, supinated grip, this position number 1 is the highest that will go. Now, it is possible that for the other variations where we do not require a carrying angle, if you remember from discussing any of the other curls, that when your palm is facing forward, you have a bend in your elbow that requires the grip to be a little bit wider. This is part of your anatomy. When you're in a hammer grip or a reverse grip, that bend is not exhibited. So if he does, Josh, go ahead and flip over to a reverse or a hammer. He might be able to come to the 0 position here for his reverse grip and for his hammer grip curls, but not for his supinated or supinating, which is the rotating one, not for those curls that involve supination at all. The concentration curl on the revolution can be performed with the arms, the adjustable arms, all the way up in position 0. Now traditionally a concentration curl was performed with a dumbbell in a bent over position, so your arm was kind of out away from your body, and it was a one-armed exercise, a single arm at a time. So we're going to do the same type of thing here. It's going to be a little different than a concentration curl with a dumbbell in that the arm is going to be away from you a little more or up a little higher. And so start with the cable, and I would put this handle strap in the shortest position, the D-ring closest to the grip, and just reach up. And the big trick here, the big secret, is going to be keeping this upper arm right in the same place where you're starting. So once you grab there, all the movement is going to be just in bending the elbow. See how she keeps that upper arm in the same place? That's the trick. So she's really controlling the spine. She's controlling the shoulder position. Now you could, if you wanted to, you could change to a hammer grip or a reverse grip and all those kinds of things. But traditionally this is performed in the supinated position or supinating, so that as she comes down she could kind of turn this way and then supinate on the way up. So you can make that choice, but the big thing is don't let this elbow drop. Point it up a little higher. In fact, go ahead and point your elbow right up at the pulley. There you go, and then keep that elbow pointed. There you go. So kind of aim it that way and you'll have the perfect concentration curl. We're going to take a look at 3 variations on lying tricep extensions. So you're going to be straightening your arm in all of these, but we're going to change things just slightly. The first one, notice we've got the arms all the way down into position number 9. Now, that means the pulleys are close together, and you're going to start by grabbing them and keeping your arm bent right after you grab the handle. We've got the handle adjusted to where it's in the longest setting with the D-ring. And just bring the arms right in by your sides. Now, you're not going to be able to point your arm toward your hips because when you straighten out, this cable or rope is going to come down and probably hit your shoulder, given that the pulleys are so narrow. So I'm going to have you angle just enough that when you straighten all the way out, the rope and the handle touch your arm, but they don't scrape on it or try to go past your arm. So that's going to choose your bottom position for you right there. Now all Amy has to do is maintain this exact upper arm angle the whole time, and she'll have the perfect, well, basically a lying pushdown is what it'll be like. So this version of this lying tricep extension is really like a lying pushdown. So there's version number 1. Version number 2, I'm going to have her simply bring her arms to straight up, and then she's going to do her tricep extension, but notice right off the bat we start to see that as she comes down, depending on how low she goes in the range of motion, this rope hits all the way against the pulley. So all I have to do is, I don't even have to unhook the previous D-ring, I can just hook up the shorter one, and now she'll be able to do that full motion, no problem. So basically her arms are 90 degrees. Her upper arm is 90 degrees from her torso right now, and she's keeping it there the whole time. If you find that you're still hitting the handle against the pulley, then all you need to do is scoot down on the bench just a little bit and it'll solve the problem. Now there is a version that's halfway in between that we could do, where instead of being 90 degrees, instead of being slightly angled away from the torso, she could come at about 45 or so and then hold that position. So really, these are all very similar exercises to a push down or a tricep extension. We're just determining a new starting position in which the upper arm is angled relative to the torso, either 90, about 45, or about 10 degrees from the torso, which would be almost like your regular push down. This preacher curl attachment is really nice. I'm going to give you some basic tips on how to set it up, but then you're going to have to experiment with it yourself based upon your trunk length, your arm length, your range of motion, a lot of different things. But here are the key factors. First of all, in the bench itself, it has several, it telescopes, so it has several positions that you can adjust it to. And here's what I would do, is just sit up nice and straight up close to it like this, and then take a look at your arm when you rest them on there. You see how, here's the plane of the pad, and Amy's arm's kind of angled there a little bit. So I'm gonna probably adjust the bench so that it brings her up to where her arm and the pad are parallel to each other. So Amy, if you'll pull that pin down there, we're gonna come up just a little bit, and it clicks into place. You can hear it and you can feel it. And then reach up there. So there she is. If she wanted to take advantage of this thing, now she could probably do it with one notch lower, but let's start right there. Like I said, you can always adjust it after one rep. Oh, I don't like it, I want to try it differently. You can do that. So next thing is, after you've attached the curl bar down here on the leg extension unit, you're going to need to adjust the starting position. So this was already in the very lowest setting, and if I bring it forward 2 notches, she can almost grab that, not quite. I'm going to bring it forward 1 more notch. There we go. So I have this set of D-rings. I have the arm curl attached to the longest D-ring, and that's also going to be influenced by the fact that the bar that it's attached to, that has these pads on it, it's in the closest hole, the closest setting here. You can see that would affect her overall starting position as well. So there's 3 things that can affect whether or not you can grab the bar and grab it comfortably. And that is the D-ring, which hole the bar is through, and then your choice of positions for the angle of this input arm right here. Now, she's going to grab, allowing for her carrying angle, because we're grabbing in supination, palms up. So she can't grab it shoulder width. You hear that all the time, grab it at shoulder width for curls. That's really inappropriate. And sometimes when you grab a straight bar at shoulder width, you end up with this sensation of almost like a shin splint that you would feel down in your shin when you run or something. It's almost that sensation that you have. Have you ever had that before when you do curls? And that's for really not allowing for this carrying angle. So you're going to be a little bit wider than shoulder width, which is what she is here. And now, hopefully you've set up this whole apparatus back to the resistance, just like we showed you in the attachment of the preacher curl, the set of the preacher curl initially. So go ahead and curl through the motion there. Now, one of the things you're going to find is that based on how you set up this initial adjustment, it'll also affect the range of the entire unit. For example, if I had positioned this hook in one of these other D-rings, this unit would be up here closer and would alter the resistance and maybe not even go as far as she wanted to. So you've got to look at both the starting position and the ending position to see if you have it adjusted just right for you. And it may take a couple trial and errors, but you're going to find the perfect one. This works great for Amy right here. But it's all these different components that make it all work well together. Now, as far as the actual performance of the exercise, watch what she's doing. Do you see her elbow is not digging into the pad? Some people dig their elbow in and their shoulder pops up and they end up just rocking around like this, almost doing more shoulder blade stuff than actual elbow flexors. So she's doing a good job of holding still and keeping the tricep more than the elbow pressed into the pad and performing the entire motion with the elbow flexors. This is the seated abdominal crunch. Now we're really in an inclined position here. You know how to set up the bench for that. And we're going to reach back, grab the resistance, curl it in very safely. Good. And then we're just going to collapse those forearms right down against your upper arm, fists basically against your shoulders. And sometimes I've seen people actually kind of try to grab across here like that, if that's more comfortable for you. Whatever you need to do to make holding of the handles and the resistance pretty comfortable thing, because you're just resting here and all of the motion is right here between the ribs and the pelvis. Now remember, this is a crunch. This is not a full sit-up, and that's one of the big mistakes is people think they need this big monster motion where they're sitting all the way up. Her low back should never really leave this bench right here. You can see how she's doing it. And she'll lay all the way down. Now watch right here. Here's what I want you to think about. Concentrate solely. Go real slow. Stop before you, Amy, I want to show them. There you go. Concentrate on what's going on between here and here. Tighten this before you ever move. So she's going to tighten and use that muscle to pull her into a crunch. Don't just start throwing the head and shoulders and hoping that all of this works somewhere along the way. The key is tightening, and don't even move unless you know that these muscles are what pulled you into position. Now you're going to work the entire abdominals here, And I know you've seen all kinds of books and magazines and goofy things that saying you're working upper versus lower versus obliques. But if you look at what's really happening, and if you test all the abdominals, every section of the abdominals is involved here, as are the obliques, okay? So it's not that we don't have other variations we can look at, but just realize that if you were choosing one exercise, you've accomplished everything right here in this one. Now you can kind of mess with it a little bit by putting these straps more off the top of your shoulder or something. That's going to change the resistance a little bit as opposed to if it came off the side of your shoulder. We've got the adjustable arms in position number 9. They're all the way down at the bottom. And that's it. Having the feet up on the pads down by the leg extension can be really helpful. Some people might find it uncomfortable trying to do this with their feet on the floor, so that's not a bad idea as well. But remember, this is not a spot reducing exercise. You can't do crunches. I don't care if you do 1,000 reps. That's not going to help you lose fat. You've got to eat right. You've got to do all those other things. You've got to do the aerobic exercise to help burn calories. This is about creating a stronger core. This is about developing the muscles so that as you lose the fat, you can see your abdominals because they are underneath there. We are working these just like any other muscle. You've just got to expose them by reducing the fat if you want to see them. This is a diagonal crunch. Now, a lot of books and magazines call this an oblique crunch, but that's kind of deceiving because it makes you think that the obliques, the muscles on the side of the abdominals, are the only things working. And it's not so much that that's the case. All of these muscles are going to be working to some degree. So it's not an oblique muscle exercise, but it is in fact an oblique motion. But to prevent the confusion, we're going to call it a diagonal crunch or a diagonal motion. Now getting into position is the main thing. Amy's going to reach back and grab the webbing, the strap, leaving the handle free for her to grab with the other hand, and then she's going to rest that with the arm across her body so she's got the right rope on the right shoulder held by the left hand, as you can see. Now all she's really moving is this side, so she's crunching. And don't just think about trying to reach as far as you can. Think about using these muscles. Watch right here. Do you see that? She's going to think about pulling these ribs towards her belly button with these muscles. So it's not just twisting and it's not just rolling around, but it's a diagonal crunch, taking these ribs towards the belly button, making the ribs lead the way. The shoulder's not in charge here and the head's not in charge here. Those are not the things we're trying to move. So watch, and you'll see every time, slow down for them because they can really see the steps. She tightens, and then she heads over into diagonal. So every time that tightening and releasing, that's really the key here, so that you know what you're working. And eventually, hopefully, you'll be able to see yours the way you can see Amy's muscles working right here. Now you can see the rectus working also. There's no way to keep those out of it. So that's why I say it's more than an oblique exercise, although you may notice the obliques more than anything else. Here is a great version of a seated abdominal crunch that we can perform in the Revolution using the leg press back pad. So we just put it in the seat as we show you in the technical portion where we talk about setting up the different attachments. And now we're going to use it to bend around and to crunch against. Now here's the big thing. Set the arms, the adjustable arms, at about shoulder height. I'm going to show you the first one at shoulder height so you can see what it looks like when the ropes are pulling straight back on her. And then one other setting, up one from that, which would be position number, this is number 5 right here, and then it'll be position number 4, I believe, if we go up one from that. But anyway, take a look. Here's the big trick. You need to control how far back you allow yourself to be pulled. Now, Amy can go a lot further than that, but right now, the whole purpose of this is you don't have a big, long, flat bench behind you anymore. So you can start to extend back a little bit, use the abdominals, watch her tighten first, and then use them to create the crunch. Now again, your low back should probably never pull away from this back pad because we're not trying to do a full sit-up type of thing like that, you see? So her low back's going to stay against there. But as she gets stronger, and as you slowly progress range of motion, don't just flop back there, but control it. Look at that. See, she's got tremendous control over her spine. She works on this kind of thing all the time. But she can go way back here, and from that position, don't just rock forward, but watch how she tightens and pulls out of that position, ribs towards the pelvis into a perfect crunch. See, the whole thing is not just simulating the exercise, folks. It's getting good enough to control it and make your muscles work from these new positions. It's not going to be magic if you go, oh, look, I can lean back as far as Amy. You've got to be able to tighten the abs and pull out of it with the same control that Amy has. Now watch this. I put this up one notch. You'll notice the rope is coming from a little tiny bit higher angle, and she's going to feel a little bit different resistance towards the end. Can you tell the difference at all, Amy? It's going to make it a little bit harder towards the end of the motion because the resistance is not falling off. It just has to do with the way that the ropes are pulling on her torso. So those are kind of your two options. One level that's about even with your shoulder height, and then maybe one notch or one adjustment that would be above that. But the key is control right here. Don't go fast, and don't worry about doing 8 million repetitions. In fact, the point of this is to slowly add weight so that you're doing the 10 to 11 to 12 repetitions to fatigue, just like you are for any other muscle group, because that's what's going to take to develop these muscles so that you can see them the way you can see Amy's. You're not going to be able to spot reduce with 1,000 repetitions done fast and getting all that burning and stuff. So pay attention to doing it right, and then start eating right and doing the aerobics too. This is a seated diagonal crunch using the seat back from the leg press. It's going to work perfect for us because it's short enough that it allows us to extend a little more and create more range of motion for this crunch. The normal bench that we might use would come clear up to her head and wouldn't allow that. So this is going to be great. Now watch. One of the key things is that the adjustable arm has been adjusted to the point where the pulley is well above her shoulder. And that angle of the rope is going to be a critical component to this. Okay? Now she's reaching across, just resting this arm right against her shoulder, so she's not really having to work super hard to hold that weight. Now, I want you to watch what's happening in here. This is sometimes called an oblique crunch. Oblique meaning diagonal. But the problem with the term oblique is that typically refers to the oblique muscles. At least people make that association in their minds. And it's not just the oblique muscles we're working. We are working the internal and external obliques, but we're also working the rectus abdominis and a lot of other muscles that are unseen. So I prefer to call it a diagonal crunch so that we don't make an immediate association with one small muscle group. Now watch, the key here is of course going to be control. And Amy's going to focus on taking these ribs towards her belly button right here, that diagonal. So let's start looking at some of those. You see a lot of people think more about moving their shoulder towards their leg or something like that. And that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes they end up with a big uncontrolled motion. And what Amy's doing is taking advantage of this short seat so she can increase not only extension, but rotation. Now what determines how far she can go back is not just her range of motion, but watch the control, the tightening. You see, she can control the muscles that pull her out of that position. That's what makes this relatively safe for her, is her level of control. And if you just go back there saying, oh look, I can move as far as Amy, but you don't have the control of the muscles that are easing her into that position and are pulling her out of it, then that's going to make this not only uncomfortable, but potentially unsafe. So your range of motion needs to totally be dictated by what you can control with the involved muscles. All right? So watch again. All this involved, you can see rectus abdominis, upper and lower, you can see everything, but watch as she's pulling this point, tightening, trying to think about moving to this point. So it's the initial tightening that's cool. She tightens before she moves, so she's kind of engaging those muscles and drawing herself to that position. And you'll notice her low back never really leaves the bench. If you can see that, straighten this arm for 1 second, Amy, as you go forward. And you can see through here that she's doing a crunch. She's not pulling herself all the way away from the pad. So that low back stays right against there. And now I'm going to show you another variation. If we go up a notch higher, which in this example is number 2, we were down on number 3 a minute ago, we've got a greater angle in the rope because the pulley's higher, and that's going to create a little bit different resistance. You might feel more resistance at the beginning or at the end. Just see how it feels. But you've got roughly 2 options in here. If you go too high, you're only going to be resisting the crunch part, not the rotation. If you go too low, you won't be resisting much of the crunch. It'll be all rotation. So there's a nice blend in terms of angle there. And like I said, we're on window 2 or 3 with our ones that we tried. But the control is going to be the key. Take a look at the variations on trunk rotation that we have on the Revolution. First, let's start with a basic trunk rotation where the cable system, or the pulley, is about even with Amy's shoulders, kind of chest-shoulder level right in there. So, as she comes out, you're going to see the rope is basically parallel to the ground. She's going to sit up nice and straight, which is always critical when you're doing trunk rotation. And with her arms straight out there, she's going to rotate in the trunk Now, she's not trying to just force the handle around there by using arm muscles and everything else in the world. She is only moving in the trunk. And I'll tell you what you've got to do. You can't be worried about how far you're moving. Some people think, oh, well, I need to be moving this a long ways. Folks, if you have limitations in your trunk, live within those until you progress out of those or away from those. Don't try to force it. Don't try to move fast and yank it and try to get some big motion that's going to end up bothering your back. So just take it easy and take advantage of what you've got. It's plenty for now, okay? So nice trunk rotation. These are not spot reducing exercise. Sorry guys, you're still going to have your love handles at the end of this thing if you're not eating right and doing the other stuff, okay? So here's a version of this that we can manipulate right off the bat. You see, as she starts over here, she doesn't have much resistance. She kind of gets her most resistance right in the center, which is fine. But I can also change things. I can have her swivel her hips to a new starting position, even straddling the bench. And then this is a little bit more advanced because she's starting in the extreme of rotation over here and then working towards neutral where she loses it. So there's no reason to go all the way over because you can see the cable end up touching her body. It's kind of like a half of the rotation, but this half is loaded a lot harder because of the angle that it's pulling. So this would be a little bit more advanced than the one we just started with. Now if you go back around, Amy, I'll show you how we're going to change things up a little bit. This adjustable arm, I want to show you, we can make some neat little variations. That was on number 5. I can go down to 6 or even more dramatically number 7. I'll go ahead and show you that. And now we're going to sit up straight, but we're going to incorporate a little flexion and extension while we're doing this. So she's going to pull from low to high. And notice how she extends and straightens her back as she comes up. There you go. And then she lets it curl just a little bit as she comes down. That's a great exercise to incorporate the rotation. And I'll tell you who really benefits from this a lot are golfers and people who do a lot of rotation in some of their sports. And it still needs to be slow and controlled, right? But this is just a great exercise that many times doing the strengthening itself will increase your range of motion. Now here's another option. Instead of that low to high, we can go above number 5 to maybe a 4 or a number 3. There we go. And now she's going to go from a high down to a low. So she starts in the extended upward position, and as she rotates, she goes into a little bit of a crunch. And we might even be, let's try that. You want to try that from a number 2? Let's just see how far we can go with that. There's number 2. That still works really well. Yep. So you can see she's still doing it all in her trunk, but Amy has tremendous spinal flexibility. You definitely need to modify your motions, your angles, and your positions based upon what's available in you. And you can slowly progress as you improve. This is a little exercise that's really just upper back extension. Now you're going to use not only the erector spinae of the upper back, but they also cross down into the low back. So you're using them all the way down, but most of the motion is really short. It's just right here up. And what we're doing is using the back pad from the leg press as kind of an axis or a fulcrum to bend around. So to grab the weight, first of all, I've got the adjustable arm set at number 8, so they're almost all the way down, but not quite. And then Amy's got her forearms up to where the handles are. So she's got to put her forearms through the webbing, and the grips are up by her elbow. She's just kind of crossing her arms and grabbing hold to help hold the resistance there. And really the little short motion, watch how she performs this. The short motion, just right here, she flexes around the pad and then straightens out, and that's about it. And as I said, you can see all these muscles down here working as well, but most of the motion is from about right here up. Now, the only reason I bring that up this as an exercise is because this is an area, you know, where so many people have this postural thing where they slouch in here. And when they slouch in the thoracic part, it throws the head forward, they get all these headaches, they get neck problems. That really, a lot of it stems from right here. So if you can develop the strength and practice holding this up straight, and something else she might even throw into this is as she straightens, she might retract the shoulder blades. So she can kind of pull that together, and then as she goes forward, she can relax and spread out. And as she comes back, she can pinch as she straightens and work on pulling that head and neck back at the same time. So really, it's kind of a postural thing. But most of the people that I know could really benefit from this. There are a couple different versions of back extension exercises you can perform on the Revolution. To get in position, we're going to have the seat and the bench flat, have the adjustable arms put down on number 8, so they're almost to the bottom, lowest, narrowest setting, but not quite. Amy's got her feet up on that foot plate down there that's really helpful to keep her from sliding forward as she's pulling backwards against the resistance, and she's got the forearms and hands through the handle itself, so the grip part of the handle is up at her elbow. Then when she locks both elbows together and kind of folds her arms, it helps her hold the resistance there. Now, here's the key. The first version of this is really just practice at maintaining your spinal alignment from head to the bottom. So as she leans forward, allowing the resistance to pull her forward, she doesn't bend at all in the spine. She's doing it from the hips. So the actual motion is going to be hip extension, but the trick is really maintaining a certain spinal position in the process. That's the whole thing. And you may find that with your legs up, it's even tougher for you to do that. So show them one just with their legs down flat on the floor there. You may have to do it here just because when you pull your legs up, that has a tendency to make some people want to bend their spine. So you need to check and see what works for you. Now you can see that she's able to bend forward. And if you feel like you're going to slide way forward, you might scoot back on the bench so you can put your heels against the foot plate, the edge of the foot plate. There are little ways you can remedy some of those things. But now the next one is what I'm going to call a more advanced version, where you're actually controlling motion. So now the hip's not going to move, and you will see her slowly start to bend from the top, curl from the bottom, and let herself go forward a little bit. And now she's going to slowly straighten all of those things against the resistance. So the resistance is pulling her forward and into a curl, and then she's straightening gently, gently into a bend backwards the other way. Real comfortable backwards. The speed needs to be really slow so you can feel what's happening. And if there's anything you don't like, you need to stop. Of course, that's true of all these exercises. But the motion is incredibly controlled here. So there are two great versions, but as with everything we do with the spine, and every exercise, of course, you want to be incredibly controlled and incredibly careful, paying great attention to what's happening with the range of motion. We're going to take a look at a traditional reverse crunch. And we're not going to use any resistance from the machine on this, but there is a little thing we'll talk about that you can do to make it harder or easier based upon the direction you lie on this bench. But take a look. The first thing is Josh is going to grab up behind his head to help stabilize this, because sometimes the legs are pretty heavy and it could be hard to bring them up if this part wants to move also. So to grab it by the head. Go ahead to start out with the easiest version is collapse your legs as much as possible. So your calves are right against your hamstrings, your legs are in tight, and we're not going to move, straighten the knees, bend the knees, we're not going to bend the hips at all. This whole thing is about moving the pelvis. So watch what he does in his head. He's going to go slow, you're going to see it happen. He's going to tighten his abs, and just like little ropes attached to his pelvis, he's going to curl his pelvis towards his ribs. So he's not even thinking so much about up, although there will be some up to it. He's thinking about curling inward. There you go. Not necessarily a huge motion, but do it all with the abs, and you will really, really feel it. Now, this is not spot reducing. This is muscle building stuff. There's no such thing as spot reduction. You've got to eat right and all that stuff for that. But the tightening and the crunching. Now, if that's getting easy, what he could do is just move these out a little bit, and it won't take much, and then if he can maintain that new position, that, in essence, put the weight further away, which makes it a little heavier. See, feel that, Josh? So that makes it a little bit harder, so you can progress up that way. Now, the other thing you could do, notice that to this whole bench, there's a little bit of an angle. And when the part you're lifting and lowering is on the low side of the angle, that makes it a little harder. So if you really had trouble with this in the beginning, and this is a tough crunch, you could not only keep the legs in tight, but you could also lay the other way on the bench, and it might feel a little easier, where your hips would be on the high end of the bench and your head would be down here. That might be the way to start. Another thing to note, this is not just lower abs versus abdominal abs. You can see his upper abdominals, the upper rectus abdominis, working just as hard as the lower. So you cannot separate those two things in terms of the forces that you put between the muscles. For the traditional abdominal crunch, you'll need to decide which way to lie on the bench, either with your head and shoulders up near the leg extension, or the way we've got Josh here, where they're down near the adjustable arms. The difference is that when we're downhill like this, with a moving portion, which is your upper body, it's going to be a little tiny bit tougher. Now, there's not much angle to the bench, so you may not notice that too much, but that is a reality. Now, here's the next thing. I would suggest trying this at least with your arms just crossed here at your chest first. All right? Some people like to immediately put them behind their head because they think their neck and head's going to get, their neck's going to get tired due to the weight of their head. But if you have to do that, I would suggest you wait until it actually gets tired so that maybe it could get a little stronger in the process instead of starting that way from repetition number 1. So here's the goal. Josh is not going to throw his head and neck into it. This is not about lifting the head. The head and neck go along for the ride. It's about moving from here to here. So watch him tighten first and use that tension to create the motion of ribs towards pelvis. If you don't feel the contraction, if you don't feel the muscle pulling you up, don't move. There's no benefit to just moving without using the things you want to use. So take your time, and as you crunch, go slow and see how far you can go. Not by how far you can throw it up there, but by how far you can crunch it up there. Feel everything from your pelvis to your ribs working, and then use all that on the way back down. Tons of control. Don't just flop down there, but work every inch on the way back down. Now, if you do that, and you do it right, chances are, even if you were doing 50 crunches some sloppy way, you'll probably be down to 10 or 12 the hard way. So take the time to get everything out of them you need. This is not a spot reducing exercise. This is a strengthening exercise, and you probably won't need much extra resistance if you're doing it correctly. With the Revolution's adjustable arm, we have some great standing trunk exercises. Now, how you perform these is of critical importance. You've really got to maintain your posture from a starting position, especially with this straight rotation we're doing here. So watch. Josh is going to grab hold and keep both arms pretty straight there, Josh. There you go. And I've got the setting. This is on number 3, I believe, which is just about even with Josh's shoulder height, pretty close to a chest shoulder height. And you see the rope lined straight up across his arms there. As he pulls, he's lined up with the rope, so the rope is within the plane of motion, and he's not slouching. And one thing you can do here is go ahead and put a little lower extremity movement into this thing. Here you can take advantage, because you're not seated on the bench, you can take advantage of everything that your lower body does in terms of rotation also. So that's not cheating here. We're going to use that. Okay, now, here's a couple variations. If I go up just a couple notches from 3 to about 1, he can start to move downward at a complementary angle. Do you see that? So the rope is angled downward, and he's moving downward also at that same angle. Do a little tiny bit more downward to it also there, Josh. There you go, something like that. So now as we do the diagonals with the rotation, you might notice that as he raises up back towards the pulley, he gets a little extension. As he comes down and across, he gets a little tiny bit of spinal flexion. That's pretty neat. Now the other side of that is moving back across 3 towards about a position number 5. Is that what that says, Josh? Something like that? 4. I'll go down 1 more. So there's a number 5. Now we're going to do, starting in a position kind of flexed and rotated, and as we elevate with the diagonal created by the rope, we're going to extend and rotate to the left. So we had the pure flat rotation, we had one that comes down and across, and we had one that comes up and across. And of course we would change sides and go over here with the other adjustable arm and create those same exercises for the other directions of rotation. A lot of people think there's not a lot to a leg extension, so they just sit down and start kicking away. And really there is. There's a lot to be picky about, starting with what you're doing in your knees. But remember the setup. Now, you've got to go back and review how to set up the leg developer in general, hooking up the ropes and all that kind of stuff. Make sure you do that on the previous section of the DVD covering that topic. But let's start up here. Take a look at the position you're seated in, the spinal position. A lot of times if you're leaning forward, or even vertical, straight up and down erect, that's going to be a position where a lot of people can't straighten out their legs because their hamstrings are so tight. So you might have to lean back a little bit, and you can put your hands back here and rest like Josh is, just a little bit back on your arms if you need to. The next thing is you'll need to predetermine the range at which you want to start your extension. So what that means is I could come clear up to here using this little adjusting mechanism, and therefore I'm not starting with much bend in my knee. I'm just working towards the straightening part. Or I could come down to what is roughly a 90-degree bend in the knee, that's typically prescribed as pretty normal place to start for most people. For the extreme, like we might do with Josh here, is to start way back there at about a 100-degree, 105-degree bend in the knee. The other thing you'll have to decide, of course, is whether you want the pads at the high position or the low position. I personally almost always put it at the high position for everybody I work with because it slightly improves the forces on the anterior cruciate ligament inside the knee. So anyway, those are some adjustments you can make also based on comfort. But now here's the big one. Take a look at this knee. A lot of people sit on the machine with their legs flared out and their legs rotated out. Now if he tries to straighten his leg in this position, his kneecap is rotated out. The axis of his knee is not really lined up with the axis of the machine. So it's going to cause potentially a little bit of trouble inside of his knee. What we'd like for him to do is keep these thighs parallel and rotated so that the kneecap is right on top. Now watch as he straightens out. You can see the kneecap stays on top. If I look down from the top, or if he looks down on his own knee, he can see as much of the knee joint inside the kneecap as he can knee joint outside the kneecap. So he's not rotated either direction, too far in or too far out. And you really can't judge that by where the feet are. A lot of people say, you mean point the feet in and point the feet out? I really suggest you forget about your feet, because moving the feet does not necessarily align the knees correctly. This is the part you should be looking at. Now once you've done all that, the key is use these muscles efficiently. Tighten them before you move. Use the tension to create the extension. Don't just kick out there, all right? So once you tighten up, now use the tension to slowly control the way down and keep that tight in there. Just in your head, it's almost like you're trying to create a fist inside of your quads, and you're keeping that tension all the way down and then regrouping and tightening and squeezing all the way to the top. The lying leg curl is performed with the leg developer, and you need to go back and review that section on attaching the leg developer if you haven't done so yet. But to get prepared specifically for the leg curl, we're going to be lying face down or prone. And you're going to reach down for this mechanism right here, pull it down, and adjust this pad upward because your feet and ankles are going to go underneath that. So now watch as Josh gets into position. This is by far the easiest way, is to step over. And that way, as he goes to lie down, he just scoots up to where his kneecap is right off of the end of this pad. His kneecap does not go on top of this pad. So another way you can tell if you're lined up or not, as we start practicing the motion, if this pad is rolling up and down, see how it rolled down his calf a little bit? It started by his ankle and rolled down his calf. So I'm going to have him scoot away from the machine a little bit. Yep, scoot off the end. Nope, the other way, Josh, just a little bit. Try that right there. Oh, yep, see how that goes. So now as he goes through the motion, it comes a little closer to staying where it's supposed to. A little bit closer. So you can kind of, yep, try that one. There you go. Now see how the pad stays right there where it starts? Just near the ankle, just above the ankle, and it stays there the whole time. So that's a great way to tell if you're lined up right now with the machine. The next thing we need to do is make sure that your kneecaps are pointed straight down. So if you're laying on this machine with your legs rotated out, turn them so your kneecaps are pointed straight down. And hopefully your feet are pointed straight down also. Now the next thing in performance is this. Tighten your abdominals and ever so slightly, hang on Josh, just one second, ever so slightly act like you're going to lift your knees straight up in the air. Now I don't want you to really lift them high. In fact, if you were really watching closely with what Josh was doing, let him down, yep. Now just a slight lift at the knee. Oh, that was so slight. He didn't raise up off the pad. It was just this little bit of tension that he's going to do his best to maintain the whole time. Now watch, as he does that, that will keep his butt from flying up in the air as he does his leg curl. And what's going on in his hamstrings will just be huge because of that. Now Josh, can you show him the big mistake everybody makes where their butt goes way up in the air? This is what most people do when they do a leg curl. And because of that, there's not a lot going on in the hamstring. Show him one more time, Josh. So here he is, he goes up in the air. And you can see some hamstring stuff, but not as much as what you're going to right now. Watch this. When he tightens his abs to prevent his low back from extending, very slight lift that he maintains. Now look at that activity in the hamstring. It's a pretty dramatic difference. And you may even have to change the weight. If you're used to cheating and throwing your bottom up in the air the whole time, if you start doing it right, you're going to have to take some weight off because this is hard. All right? There's always going to be some gastrocs or calf muscles involved in the leg curl, and there should be. It is an important part of performing the knee flexion exercise. But the main thing here is tightening those abs to prevent your back from hyperextending, and that little bit of control. And we're not throwing the knees way up in the air, but that little bit of control that keeps your butt down, your knees slightly up, and the tension in the hamstrings. Let's take a look at some calf raise or heel raise variations on the revolution. First of all, you should try it. You know, if you haven't been doing calf exercises, be real careful. It's really easy for your first time, even with virtually no weight, to get really sore and not even be able to walk the next day. And I don't care what anybody says, that no pain, no gain thing, that's not right. If your body's hurting that bad, that's called an injury. That's the bottom line. So look, start with both calves. And it's nice because you can grab a hold of the pivot point for the adjustable arms if you've got them all the way down. So you'll have a little handle there for stability. Put the ball of your foot up on the edge of the platform, and then, not just your toes, the whole ball of your foot. And then slowly use your calf, tighten your calf to lift your heels as high as you can. And that ends up being the part that even if you've done lots of calf work before, but you never went all the way up, even you'll get sore on this one. So take it easy. Just do one set, even if you've been doing 3 or 4 on some machine, because if you've been doing little short ranges of motion, this will be different. So notice how Josh tightens the calf, goes all the way up as high as he can. Even when he gets to the top, he keeps trying to tighten that muscle tighter and tighter. It's that control that makes things really work well, folks. And then he works on the way down. He controls it down. He doesn't just flop to the bottom. Then he retightens his calves and comes all the way back up. So that's the first version, is working both sides at the same time with this used for stability. Now, the next one would just be, I think even before the resistance, though. Yeah, let's just wait, because if they've only done 2 of them before, both sides at the same time, then let's just go to 1. Yeah. So now he's just going to stabilize on this one side, and he'll do the other one later. But all the same things we just discussed, but now he's has to learn to balance on this side, and obviously the weight's doubled now because he's just using one calf. And even after this, if you still need resistance, go ahead and adjust your handle to the closer D-ring to the grip, and then you can have a little bit of resistance while still having some stabilization from the machine over here, and a little bit of resistance pulling down and forward. And of course you can start putting on the weight up here and really add to this calf exercise. But the whole thing is going to be the control with which you try to get all the way to the top and then control all the way down to the bottom. There are several different versions of hip extension that we can explore, not only manipulating the position of the adjustable arm, but even manipulating the position of the knee. So here's probably the first and most traditional one. And the nice thing is we can use this other adjustable arm to hold on to for stability, and even this pivot point for this side if we want to. We've got the foot harness on, so review how to put that in place in the previous sections of the DVD. But take a look. Amy's going to bend the leg she's standing on just ever so slightly, not a lot, just she's not locking out her knee. That's the big thing over there. And then this other leg, she can let it pull forward with the resistance. She's going to keep this knee pretty straight, and then she's going to slowly reach back. Now watch. Her leg doesn't go too much behind the alignment of her torso here. So she's leaned forward just a little bit. The thing I'm saying is that you really don't have much hip extension, and usually if people throw your leg real up high. Usually if people do that where they're going real high, it's because they're bending somewhere else. And that's really not necessary. So keep all this real stable and just reach back as far as you can tighten with your glutes, not as far as you can throw it and cheat, okay? Now, in the other version we're going to look at before we start manipulating the arm is bending the knee to 90 degrees. Come on up to a starting position here. So she's going to keep this bend like it's got a cast on it, all right? So now as she rotates through, same range of motion at the hip, actually, only she got to start a little higher because she bent her knee. But notice how she keeps that bend in the knee the whole time. So you're going to feel a little different stuff going on here. The hamstring's going to feel involved because it's keeping that bend in the knee. So it's going to be a nice variation. Now watch this. You can go ahead and rest there for a second. I'm going to bring this out a couple notches. And you can go ahead and scoot over so you're lined up with this thing, but you can hang on to this time. Yep. So So go ahead and face me. But because this is higher, Amy's going to be able to start. She's going to bring her leg up to a higher starting position. Okay, so she's not going back any further, but she has a greater starting position of flexion as she moves towards extension. And the same thing will be true if she does the bent knee version. So come on up here and bend your knee. Now look how far she's starting. Okay, so that's great to be able to manipulate this adjustable arm outward and alter the range of motion so dramatically. So there's several different variations, and explore them all. But remember, the weight, you really need to keep that low because it's about control here. Go up in weight only as you can perfect and maintain the things we just discussed. This is the leg kickback, and we're going to do this one from a standing position. So, Amy's going to very slightly bend, just very slightly so she's not locked out on the right knee. And we've got the adjustable arm out here at position number 5. She can use it to stabilize herself with her hands. Now she needs to make sure that she's over far enough with this moving leg in front of the pulley so the rope is pulling straight forward instead of out to the side, okay? So as you're doing the exercise, you can look down and you can confirm all those things. Now, the starting position with the foot harness on the foot and the snap hook attached to the front D-ring here, she's going to come way up into hip flexion, into knee flexion, and then extend back. And she can even throw in her ankle motion if she wants, letting her toe come up as her leg comes up, and then pointing that as she goes down and back. The big trick here is to control this. You see, start out with stabilizing this spinal area so there's no motion here. All the motion's in the lower extremity joints. And then, only after gaining tremendous control, you can start to put a little spinal extension when you go into the leg extension, and a little spinal flexion when you go into the leg flexion, but only under control. You see, if that motion of your spine is happening haphazardly, well, that's a problem. So it's not just whether that motion is happening or not, it's how well is it controlled. That's always the key. Now, this is not a spot reducing exercise. We're not going to burn the fat off the buns and that kind of thing, but this is going to create great muscle tone underneath here and the shape that everybody's looking for. Now, you've got to have all the other stuff in place, a little bit of aerobic activity to burn calories and eating right, the correct lifestyle to really see what you want to see. We have a tremendous number of variations of hip abduction. This is where you're moving your leg away from the center on the revolution. And we're going to perform most of them with the adjustable arm on position number 8. That way you can stay back pretty close to the machine and grab onto the arm also for stability if you need to. You could perform these exercises without hanging on by standing off onto the floor. That is an option also if you want to work on just the standing control and stability part of that as well. But for the actual motions, now watch each one of these because there's very subtle variations. The normal abduction is just with the toe, the foot pointed straight ahead and then reaching out to the side. And you don't even have to go quite that far in front, I don't think, Amy. Just bring your, maybe back like that. So you can kind of put your foot out in front so this cable doesn't rub across your other leg a little bit like she's done. Now here's the first variation. Well, first of all, I should probably tell you this. As far as range of motion, a lot of people think that they're ballerinas and they're going to get this leg clear up to here. And most people's hip joints only abduct to 45 degrees on either side. Now you're going to notice people who get way high by tilting their whole pelvis, but we're not trying to do that. We're trying to keep the pelvis relatively flat and level. So reaching out there, make sure it's just with the hip muscles and it's just in the leg, okay? And a lot of you are not even going to have 45 degrees. So don't worry about how far, worry about how well you're doing it. And then the next thing, I'm going to have Amy turn her toes towards me. So she's kind of not, she's not turning it, notice she kept all this straight. She didn't turn her whole body. But she just turned that leg in towards me a little bit, and she maintains that position of rotation. Now that will further alter your motion. Some people will have even less abduction when doing that, but you'll feel very different muscular participation. The third variation is to turn outward into external rotation, not the torso, not this leg, but just by pointing the foot and this other knee outward and moving straight out. Now, we're going to go back and take a look at some diagonals. So instead of moving straight out, I'm going to have Amy face me a little bit. So she's about 45 degrees before she had her back to the main rail of the machine. Now she's got just this leg towards it. She's angled about 45 degrees. But she's still going to move her leg in line with the main rail of the machine. So in essence, she's performing a backwards diagonal motion. So there's one great variation right there. So it's not straight back like extension. It's not straight out to the side like abduction. It's a 45-degree angle, and we can do the same type of angle facing the other direction. So she angles away from me 45 degrees, but her leg still moves in line with the machine. Keep it moving against the rail. So she's not kicking straight forward. It's a 45-degree angle. And she can, again, point her toe in, point her toe out with all those other three variations of foot angle or leg angle while performing the diagonal motion. So there's some tremendous variation there. Now, this is not a spot reducing exercise. This is not an outer thigh exercise. There's no muscle in your thigh working to move this. These are all deep hip muscles up real high right here that are incredibly important muscles. In fact, as you're doing this, you'll even feel the same muscles on the other side working to hold your position while you're standing on one leg. Hip flexion is an exercise that you wouldn't do very often, but there's an awful lot of people out there, maybe in specific sports, maybe even in stages of rehabilitation, that addressing this musculature might really be important. So take a look. We've got two versions. One is with the straight leg. Now before we even start, Amy's got a hold of the other side over here, the other adjustable arm that I've put straight out so she could grab it, but she's making sure she's still pretty much facing forward. And I've got this arm down on position number 8. So it's not all the way down, it's out one notch. And we have the foot harness on attached to the back D-ring by the heel. So now she's going to very slightly bend the other leg, so it's just ever so slight, just so it's not locked out. And then she's going to keep this leg straight and slowly go up into flexion. We don't want to kick it. Now this is going to be tough, I mean really tough. And then one of the biggest things is she's going to want to move in the pelvis here. So she needs to control that, and if it is occurring, it's because she intentionally wanted it to and not because it was a haphazard loss of control. Now the other version of this is real simple. In fact, it's a little simpler version than this one because we're going to shorten the length of the leg by bending the knee as she comes up. That's going to reduce the overall resistance because that foot harness and the rope are not out quite so far from her as she extends. So there's hip flexion with knee flexion, and the first one was hip flexion while maintaining the knee in extension. All right, we're going to perform hip abduction in the standing position. And one of the neat things we've been able to do is use this seat back that is for the leg press and put it on the sliding seat, scoot it all the way out here, and it's going to give Amy something to stabilize with. The only thing I want you to watch for is that this thing does, remember how it locks into position. So she can push on it pretty easily, but if she pulls on it, it's going to move a little bit. And it's not going to come out, but it's just going to move about 3 inches there. So just realize that before you start really relying on it. Realize which direction you can use it. The other way it's going to move a tiny bit. Anyway, I went ahead and moved the adjustable arm out to number 7. And this allows her to bring this leg up a little bit and keep some considerable resistance in terms of angle. Now I'm going to ask you not to worry too much about trying to cross over. Because a lot of times you see people trying to cross over. Now look what she had to do. What she had to do to actually cross over was either turn her pelvis or drop her pelvis. And there's nobody out there that's much more flexible than Amy is. But your hips, in terms of adduction, just don't go that far in front of the other leg. So the most you can probably expect is to end up lined up with the foot you're standing on. Speaking of the one you're standing on, you're going to want a very slight bend in it the whole time, just a little bit. Now we've got the foot harness using the D-ring on the outside to attach the snap hook from the rope. And so now she's going to reach out this way, control it into the eccentric so it's not pulling your pelvis into a big tilt sideways. You've only got at the most 40, 45 degrees out here, and some people less than that as a starting position out this way. So many variations. Watch, this is standard what she's doing right now, where she's just coming straight in and her foot is pointed straight forward. First variation, I could have her turn her toes away from me without turning anything else and just pull inward. She could turn her toes towards me, which is external rotation, and still pulling straight inward. Okay? So there's 3 variations just on the traditional straight across plane. Now I'm going to have her turn her whole body away from me at 45 degrees. So she's not really letting her leg go straight out to her side, She's letting it come back even with or in a parallel movement to the rail, the main rail of the revolution. So she's not moving out, she's not moving backwards in extension, she's moving at a 45-degree angle. And within that plane, she could also do the toe in, the toe out, all that kind of stuff for this diagonal of adduction. Now the final one is where she would actually turn more towards me. So there's where she started. Now she turns more towards me, just 45 degrees. Nope, that's a little too far. There you go. Now as she moves parallel to the rail, she's not letting it be, her leg's not moving forwards and backwards, it's not moving out to the side. It's at this 45-degree angle that, again, she could keep her toes pointed forward, she could turn them in, or she could turn them out. Every one of these slight variations is ever so slightly altering the contribution of the participating muscles. You're not going to see some big dramatic change. This really has more to do with making sure every muscle gets an opportunity to participate at its fullest. This is the kneeling kickback. So we're going to have the adjustable arm in position number 8, the full bench on and flat, and then Amy's going to have her right knee, right hand on the bench, but she can reach over here and grab a hold of the adjustable arm to help stabilize her side to side. And then this leg right here, the left leg, is going to be the one where the hip motion and knee motion is going to occur. So hopefully as she does the motion, this pulley position in number 8 is lined up so the rope is in line with her motion. There you go. And she can reach forward into almost full hip and knee flexion and then reach back and extend all the way. So whether or not you use this as opposed to the standing version of the kickback is a lot of personal preference more than anything else, but they're both going to be really good exercises performed in both almost exactly the same range of motion and muscle recruitment. Let's take a look at the seated leg curl. Now, Amy's going to use the foot harness on her left leg. The adjustable arm is all the way down to 9, and she's going to use her right leg to help stabilize herself. So it's on the edge of the platform down there, kind of her heel or her midfoot's on the edge of the platform in case you can't see that real well. And she's got the sliding seat all the way back and locked. Now, with the rope coming from this setting, straight in front of her leg and attached to the toe portion of the foot harness. And all she needs to do is elevate and maintain the position of this thigh as she bends her knee and creates the knee flexion exercise, the leg curl. Now, that's the big trick right there, because a lot of people will have trouble without having a pad to hold this thigh in position. This ends up being the greatest challenge, right? Because people want to let their leg come up or let their leg move down, and so your ultimate goal is the awareness of where your thigh is, where its position in space is, as you perform this exercise. Come all the way out and then pull back as far as you can, maintaining control and position of that thigh. Seated abduction is performed with the bench on and flat. And also you need to adjust the adjustable arm to position number 8. So it's just slightly out a little bit. Put the foot harness on and attach to the D-ring on the inside of the foot. So notice it's on the leg that's furthest away from the pulley. Now as she uses the other leg to stay stable on the ground, she's going to straighten the left leg in this example, and then slowly move outward and then back towards the middle. So she's pretty much starting at middle or midline and moving outward. Now, we might be able to play, let's just see how this works if I went out to position number 7. That might work pretty well too, so you can kind of check that out and see which one you like best. But I don't think we'd be able to go much higher than that because we're way out of the plane of the leg and the abduction motion, which of course is moving away from midline. Keep that toe pointed straight up on this one, and if you want a variation, you can choose to alter whether the toe's pointed towards the movement or the toes pointed away from the movement. There we go. So there are your variations on seated hip abduction. Seated hip adduction requires that the bench is flat. And let's first take a look at using the adjustable arm in position number 8, which is almost all the way at the bottom. And we've got the right leg set up this time to take a look at this with the foot harness and using the D-ring on the outside of the leg here. So, Amy, go ahead and straighten out your right leg, and we're going to have her slowly control it back towards, away from the center, and concentrically move towards center that way. There you go. So she's moving back towards the other leg, controlling it out this way. And you know what? I'm just wanting to check this out. Position number 7, a little bit wider. That works pretty well too, doesn't it? So 7 or 8, any higher would probably not work well at all. But that allows you some pretty decent resistance within the plane, either 7 or 8 down here, within the plane of motion for hip adduction, which by definition is bringing the leg back towards midline. We're working all those muscles on the inner side of the thigh, and this is not a spot reducing exercise, folks. This is going to strengthen and increase the tone, if you will, of those muscles. But if you're interested in fat loss, then you're going to have to watch that diet and do those aerobics and build up the muscle in your body to help burn more calories. This is ankle eversion, which is an outward motion of the ankle. So we're using the resistance to work against her as she performs that motion. Now, you got to be careful because it's real easy to use a lot of other things to try to create that motion. So to set up, obviously the bench is flat. We've got the adjustable arm on position number 8 and the foot harness in place. Now, the snap hook is out by the toe, and I'm going to have Amy actually bring her hands down and help stabilize. Now, you don't have to do that unless you find it easier in the beginning, but she's going to help stabilize her knee. At least she could even indicate if she was trying to move it up in the hip or something. But the motion is simply turning outward only in the ankle. See how her leg's not turning? Show them what happens if you do it wrong. See, if the whole knee and everything's turning out, that's not what we're looking for. So this is still, whether you use your hands or not, but the motion is just right down here in the ankle, moving it outward, letting it come all the way back in, outward again, and that's all there is to it. We're going to look at ankle inversion. This is one of those tiny ankle motions that really is important to be able to control. Seated position, and we've got the adjustable arm down on number 8. Foot harness in place, but we're using the toe ring, the D ring this time that's out by the toe, and the rope connected to that with a snap hook. Now look, Amy's going to straighten this leg out a little bit, and notice that her whole thing here is to just move at the ankle. Now the mistake that some people make is turning the whole leg inward like that, and that's really not what we're looking for. So you can either try to control it actively, you could even reach down so that you're holding it or even at least aware of any excess motion up there. But the actual motion we're looking for is just in the ankle, and the rope is here pulling outward against her inward motion called inversion at the ankle. And both of these ankle motions, inversion and eversion, are really nice for rehabilitation exercises, especially if someone has recurrent ankle sprains and things like that. So don't ignore these. There's an awful lot of athletes that can benefit from these little tiny motions. This is ankle dorsiflexion, and all that means is that you're starting with your toes kind of pointed out there, and you're pulling them up, bending the ankle, pulling it up towards the knee. Now this foot harness works great for that because it has a loop, not a D-ring, but a loop of webbing on the bottom of it right underneath the ball of the foot, and that's exactly what this is for. So put the position of the adjustable arm in number 8, and even though it's the adjustable arm that's on her left side, she's using her right leg. So it angles across the bench. That allows her entire leg to be supported, but her foot and ankle can still hang off the edge. And you really couldn't do it that way if we were using the left leg for this left side. So angle across, foot harness nice and tight, and you can see the motion is real simple. She's keeping her knee straight. She doesn't want to bend her whole knee and everything, but it's just releasing down eccentrically as far as you can, and then pulling up and really contracting all the way up in through here, and pull those toes and that foot up as far as you can towards the knee. Here's just another alternative for a leg extension using the adjustable arm all the way down in position number 9, foot harness with the snap hook attached to the D-ring that's by the heel. Now Josh is just lying on his back, and he's chosen to put his hands up to help stabilize the thigh. You need to be careful when you do that, because if you pull the thigh too close to you, you may never be able to straighten out your leg because your hamstring will be too tight. So let it come up here so it's almost straight up and down, and then slowly just straighten out the leg up and right over the knee like that. And I got to tell you, it is also, can you feel your hamstring at the top right there? It's not a bad hamstring stretch at the same time. So as you're strengthening this side with the quads, your hamstring's learning to let go and relax a little bit more on the other side. So just make sure that you've got this close setting, the bottom setting on the adjustable arm, so that the rope is right in line with the knee here and not pulling off to the side one direction or the other. This is a lying prone leg curl, and we're not using the leg developer that's on the other end. We're just using the foot harness and the cable or the rope. So this time we're going to have the adjustable arm all the way down in position number 9, and the foot harness in place, and the rope and snap hook are attached to the D-ring that's near the toe of the foot harness. So what Josh needs to think about are all the things we did on any other leg curl, trying to stabilize that thigh so that it doesn't move around. We're trying, in other words, keep his butt from flying up in the air. You see that so many times. Show him, Josh, when people do that wrong. You'll see that rear go flying way up in the air, and it's not going to bother you that much. Sometimes your low back will get tight from doing that. The biggest thing you're going to notice is you're not going to perceive much hamstring activity. But if you try this, try tightening the abdominals, and actually, watch what he did. He just ever so slightly lifted his knee. Show him that one more time. Watch right here. He just barely lifts his knee and keeps it there. It doesn't go any higher, but he keeps it there as he curls in, and the hamstring is much more noticeable. You can really feel it working when you do that. And then one more time, keeps the knee up, and in order to keep it up as he goes eccentrically and releases, think about reaching out with your foot instead of down. So one more time, he's curling it in, keeping the knee up, and then reaching out towards the machine or towards the adjustable arm rather than down towards the bench. And that'll help you keep the tension and the thigh position right where you need it. Make sure that you line up. See, every time he brings his foot down, it heads straight for the pulley. That means that rope is always pulling in the correct direction across his knee, and is not pulling to the outside or to the inside. This is one of the most amazing features of the Revolution. This leg press is not a compromise at all for a home piece of equipment. It rivals many commercial gym leg presses. Part of it is because of the foot plate, part of it is because of the sliding seat with a seat back, and a big part of it is because of the doubling system that increases the resistance 2 times from whatever you put on here. So realize that if you load up 100 pounds, 50 on this side and 50 on this side, and then you hook up the seat the way we describe in that section of the DVD, then what you have set up is 50, 50, 100 times 2, 200 pounds on the leg press. And that's pretty cool. But now taking a look at how to really set up some of these features. Number one, the feet on the feet position on the foot plate. The width is something you can vary a little bit. But as you go wider than hip width, you need to also slowly start turning the toes outward, just very slightly. So if Josh was to go clear over to the edge of the foot plate, going over there, and of course you always want to keep your whole foot on the foot plate. Don't ever think, oh, I need to be wider, and just put half your foot on the foot plate. That's a bad idea. It's scary. You might slip off. Okay, so keep your whole foot on there. Always push straight into the foot plate. And now that he's a little wider, notice he's got the angle of his thigh and the angle of his foot going the same direction. That is so great on his knee to do it that way, right? The height on the foot plate, you can manipulate that a little bit based upon your leg length, because this length of your femur or your thigh is going to affect what's comfortable here, and also how much bend do you want in your knee. So there's some things to consider. Now, relative to range of motion, there's a lever down here at the bottom. And if I release this, if you go ahead and come back forward a little bit, take a little pressure off. If I change this back here, it's going to allow Josh to go further back if he needed more. Let's say that someone with real long legs gets on this thing and slides back, and if the snap hooks and the ball hits the seat before he gets all the way back or something, well, he can adjust this lever down here to get further back. Conversely, it also changes how far forward he can go. For example, if I put this all the way back here, then he doesn't get to go as far forward. His tension stops at about right there because this is hitting back here on this pulley. So we can adjust this and determine his starting position as well as his ending position. So you will need to play with those things and become familiar with what works perfect for you. Now, as far as the actual pressure you're going to put through your body, I'm going to ask you not to necessarily push through your toes or even your heels, but to push straight through your tibia, your lower leg, straight through your ankle, right there through the middle of the arch, okay? And I'd also like for you to keep your low back and your upper back against the back pad the whole time. So try not to let your pelvis curl up, because sometimes as people come forward, their pelvis curls up and they get a big bunch of flexion in their lower back, their spine. We're going to try our best to avoid that. So if you can remember all those things, push evenly on both sides, keep your thigh and your toe pointed the same direction, push evenly through your foot, right through your ankle, and keep your low back against the pad and your pelvis against the pad, and you're going to perform a great, great leg press. Perform it by thinking about tightening the legs all the way around, because you're using some hamstrings and a lot of quads, and of course a lot of glutes too. So don't just think about shoving against the foot plate. Think about what you're using involved in this exercise, and try to keep tight as you lower yourself down. Tighten the whole leg super tight, and only go as low as you can control with the tension you generate. And then use that tension to slowly tighten and squeeze the muscles to perform the press. Tighten yourself back out there. Don't just try to shove, okay? You'll get a lot more out of it by trying it with those intention-based cues. We're going to use the leg press setup on the machine to perform a calf exercise on the foot plate. Now, this range of motion adjustment that's down here on the bottom, you can let it go as far back up the rail here as it'll lock, the very final hole. That means you won't have to do much of a leg press to get to the calf exercise, if that makes any sense. You won't have to be real deep doing a big leg press just to get to where you're doing your little ankle motions. So, Josh is ready to go here, and make sure your entire ball of your foot is up on the foot plate. Don't just hang by your toes, okay? Get that ball up on there so you do not slip off. Listen, that's very important. I've seen a lot of people just get a little bit of their shoe up on there and almost push down as they're doing their calf exercise and slip off and end up with their shin scraping on this. I've seen it on leg presses. I've seen it in gyms. It happens a lot. So make sure that you get enough of your foot up on there, and then make sure you're pushing straight into the foot plate, not pushing down at all towards the ground, okay? Now, the big trick here is to use the calves to control into dorsiflexion. In other words, his heels are going towards the machine, being pulled by the resistance over there, and then using those calves to pull that heel towards the knee as much as possible. Now, Josh is doing something that's a really good idea. He's keeping a slight bend in his knee. Now, you can go a little closer to straight, about right there where he is, like that, or you can keep a little greater bend. But the thing I'd like for you to do is try to keep it there so it doesn't become a leg press exercise. And the thing we're really trying to avoid by keeping the slight bend, we don't want him to lock out. Show him what locking out looks like. When we do that, we really don't want that stress on the knee while we're trying to work our calves. So keep that very, very slight bend just right there. And take the time to go all the way as far as you can, really squeezing this. And when you think you're all the way, when you think you've really pointed your toes as far as you can and pulled your heels as far as you can towards your knees, keep trying. Give it another second and really squeeze. And sometimes that's where you'll feel this exercise the most. Have you noticed that, Josh? So take your time to really do this right and heed all those little warnings about how to push on this exercise, and it'll be not only safe, but it'll just be tremendous for your calves. This is the aerobic rowing exercise, the one that if you choose the right weight, you can do for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes and burn some calories. So it's really a great aerobic activity on what is otherwise a strength machine. Now listen, you can set the adjustable arms either all the way down at 9. We're trying this time one notch out at position number 8. All right? We've got the handles to the shortest setting, that D-ring closer to the grip, and the seat is sliding. Now Josh has got his feet up on the foot plate. Now here's the thing, it's a coordination of effort. So Josh is going to come up here, let the resistance pull him forward. He's going to bend forward slightly and let his arms be straight. Then all at once. Let me tell you what, before he does it, here's what you're going to watch for. He's going to lean back, bend his arms, and straighten his legs all at the same time. Nice controlled motion, watch, nice and slow. Straightens his legs, bends his arms, and leans back just a little bit. So imagine you're rowing a boat. If you've never done that before, you'd be reaching forward with the oar and then pulling backwards, powering yourself through the water. Doesn't have to be a fast motion. Obviously, if you're going to keep this up for an extended period of time, the resistance needs to be appropriate for that. But it's really this coordinated effort. And the faster you try to do it in the beginning, the harder it's going to be to make everything work out at exactly the right time. So go nice and slow like Josh is at the beginning. Think about everything that's happening. And then you can slowly speed up a little bit like he's doing when it becomes more fluid and feels more normal to you. That is perfect. So remember, straighten the legs, bend the arms, lean back. Lean forward a little bit, straighten the arms, bend the knees. There you go, back and forth. Perfect. The adjustable arms on the Revolution allow for so much variation. But also take a look at the independent handles. These allow for a tremendous amount of variation also on virtually every upper body exercise. There will be on your exercise list just one or two that require unilateral or one-arm, single-arm motion. And as you review all the exercises and how to perform them, those you can make note of. But every other upper body exercise, you can do one of these things. Now, traditionally, people work bilaterally, meaning both arms at the same time. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's a great way to do it. But look at your other options and explore them over the course of your workouts. Number one is to do it unilaterally, or just one arm at a time. Okay? And in the process of doing that, completely let go of the other handle. Well, that's kind of neat because it requires your trunk muscles to stabilize a little differently because you're loaded on one side, so they're having to work to offset that pull on just one side of your body so you don't bend that way. This is true of your pressing movements, your pulling movements, your arm movements, your pushing movement, all these things. Now, you could also do a unilateral or single-sided motion while just holding the other side, the other handle. Well, this is a little different still because it's loading symmetrically, even though you're just moving one side. So these trunk muscles aren't having to work quite the same way as the one we just showed you because this load balances it out even though it's not moving. So there's bilateral and two great versions of unilateral. Now, let's look at alternating, because another way to perform these things are a more traditional version of alternating where you complete the rep with one side, let it rest in a sense, while you're completing a rep with the other side. True alternation. But there's a great version called simultaneously alternating that you've got to try, where as one arm's going up, the other arm's going down. So you're under constant motion all the time on both sides, they just happen to be in different directions. And this is so great with so many exercises, like I mentioned before. The pressing, the pulling, the rowing, all of these things can use simultaneous alternation. So give it a try. I really think you're going to find some of these things to be of great benefit to you. I wanted to take just a minute and show you how great these handles are and all of the things you can do with them. First of all, we discussed that there's two different positions that can help you change your range of motion, in essence, for workouts. There's a longer D-ring and a shorter one that's closer to the grip. But how you use those can really save you time and create efficiency. In other words, if you're going to go from this longer setting to the shorter, you don't have to disconnect this D-ring. Just reconnect or connect this closer one and you're set and you're ready to go. So you don't have to take off one and put on the other, two-step process. You can do it with one step every time. Even extending it back out, you can do with one step. So there I am, I'm ready to go and just continue with my workout just like that. Now another cool thing is that these handles are made of webbing. And that allows you to do some neat things with the handle itself or the grip portion of the handle as it can slide over the webbing. So most people will use this in a more traditional fashion where the grip remains perpendicular to the main strap right here. And that's fine for curls, and you'll see it in presses and all those great exercises, right? But also, we can switch this to a more vertical or hammer type position. Now the neat thing about that is you can still slip your hand through, so you're still not required to use your grip as the sole way of maintaining this in your hand. You've got the webbing going around here, and that not only works for things like tricep exercises, but you can use it for some of your hammer curling exercises as well. That works out really nicely. And you can remove your hand from the webbing and grasp the whole thing and use this resistance off the side for other exercises. Like there are some chest exercises where as I come across, I can also rotate and have resistance against that rotation. That's pretty advanced and that's pretty cool. And I can do the same thing for some of my bicep or curling exercises by having that resistance come off of the pinky side of my hand. Then as I curl, I have resisted supination as well. So there are some tremendous values built into this handle. Take advantage of them and you'll totally change your workouts.